All right, let me wait for this timer to start. Okay. 3, 2, 1. What's going on, guys? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Where I Belong. My guests today are Joe Harris of Photoshopped as Fuck and Chase Lepard of Chase Lepard. What's going on, guys?
Hey.
Hey.
Good. What's good? Thank you
Nothing
for having
much.
us on, man.
Oh, thank you guys for taking the time.
Yeah, it's good to see the Frog King again.
Yeah, well, I just had you on the other day, and I'm just beating on your door to get you on repeatedly, harassing you. You're just pretty soon you're just gonna take my show over. I'm just
That's
gonna
fine.
give it to you. I'm just
I'm
gonna
down.
pass the baton. It's a triathlon of sorts.
First
But,
your show, then your life.
Then
Speaking
you're
of passing the baton, we might as well intro into your last kind of bomb drop at the end of the episode. I'm excited about algorithms and seeing what Chase and Nathan
Yeah.
put together.
Yeah, I'm excited
say
too.
that was a-
There's a lot going on right now. We're planning. We got some things going. We've
Well,
got a
we
lot
do.
of plans. We've
It's
got a
not-
couple.
Like a,
We've got
I'm
so
s-
much planned that it seems like it's so big. We got a lot to get ready before we can start episode 1. So, and we've got to make sure health is in order too. So, I'm
right.
excited.
And
sure.
you've also got your hands in like a million things. How many Instagram accounts do you have, Chase? Because I swear it's like there's
I'm
like
not al-
one.
not
There's
allowed
one
to make
account
any more.
for yeah.
I'm literally not allowed to make any more. It won't let me. Like
Yeah,
I've tried from someone else's phone, and somehow it knows that it says no, you're not allowed to make another account. So
What do
It
you
just
want? You
reads
gotta
your
like a-
face identity, and it's like,
I
hell
don't know
no,
what it
Chase,
is,
don't
but
even
yeah.
try it, man.
yeah, exactly. They're like, you've done enough.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, try another app.
Yeah, you've got
No.
your hands in a lot of stuff. Joe, you just came. One, I'm fresh off listening to you with Mikey Klein on One by One, which
fun,
that was
man.
a great episode. I love Mikey. He's I wish that I want to see him do more. He takes like these long breaks and then he comes out with a podcast, and it's like I listen to them the second they drop because it's like Easter eggs. It's like he dabbles in the very same world that we dabble in. So everything that he's talking about is hyper relevant to everything that we're aware of. So every time he drops one, I listen to it immediately, and it's always something that pertains to just the niche world that we're in of podcasting and podcast art and all this other stuff. And I wish he was just there more because, like I said, every time it pops up, I see it and I hop on immediately. But I just came off of listening to you on that,
Thank you.
and then and you just came back from Hawaii.
I did. Aloha, boys. It was.
Oh my God.
It's magical, man. If you haven't been, if you have the ability to travel and you can go somewhere, like you don't have to leave the United States. It's Hawaii's amazing. It's one of my favorite travel destinations. It's where I proposed to my wife. It's where,
Oh.
it's where one of my best
Hmm.
friends in the world got married. Like I have a lot of really special memories there. My dad took me there as a kid, and that's kind of what sparked that little seed for
And
me. But
That shirt too, for
Dude.
sure.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm still there. Like half of me is still on a beach in Hawaii, so
Yeah.
I'm doing my best to bring it home. But man, I love it there.
Looking
It's hard to
tropical
leave
as fuck.
vacation. Oh,
Dude,
for sure.
Sometimes you gotta be the vacation. You feel me?
I have never.
Ja feel.
Do you do a lot of?
Ja feel.
Do you do a lot of traveling?
You know what? I'm grateful. I'm lucky to have been able to travel a lot when I was younger. My dad was real spontaneous and wanted to take trips and go, whether it was driving from NorCal down to Disneyland or eventually flying to Europe and doing cool stuff as a kid. And then he's a college professor, so he ended up starting to take tours, right? Like these college tours of 40 people, but half of it was like the older community and just people that wanted to join in, and then half would be students. And so it would be kind of like written off as like a college field trip, if you will. So I got to tag along on a few of those, and I'm in love with travel, man. I still like to get out and go experience the world while I'm young, and I got the ability to do so. But not
Right.
everybody does. So I'm very grateful. I know how lucky I am to be able to do that. So
Wow, that's your dad was a professor?
yeah, he's a college professor. He's a musician. I mean, first and foremost, but he's got a
Wow.
doctorate in music, and he teaches at like a local college by where I grew up, and does choirs and puts on amazing jazz concert, and really like brought jazz to that community. And
Wow. So he had, when you were coming up, you must have had, there must have been a real emphasis on education.
yeah, not yeah. Oh, dude, education and music and art and I mean everything. I'm lucky. I was very gifted. Both my parents, they weren't together, but they're both very open-minded, well-educated, passionate, awesome people. And so I had a good foundation at home for that. Yeah, education was very important to me.
That's crazy, man. Chase, have you done a lot of traveling? I know you're going to Israel this like upcoming month.
Yeah, my company that I work for, Wix.com, is based in Israel. So this will be my third time going to Israel.
Wow.
And it's beautiful there. And the thing about Tel Aviv is it's like the San Francisco of that area. Like it's very liberal, it's very open-minded. People
Cool.
there all like everywhere you go, everyone speaks English. It's not something like you really have to struggle to find your way around. There's a lot of apps there since it's like the Silicon Valley of the area as well. There's
Wow.
apps for everything as well. So if you're taking a taxi, you can just put in your destination. You don't have to try to tell the taxi driver where you're going in their language. They're going to know that you're foreign and that you use the app to find your way. And it's all like set up convenient. So everywhere you go is awesome. It's easily set up. And Israel's great for that. Then I went to Mexico, but we really didn't leave a resort when we went there. That was kind of a just all-inclusive thing. And I mean, you could just do that here in the United States.
Right. That's probably for the best, though, right? Like as far as
Yeah.
leaving and going and exploring Mexico, it's probably stay at the resort.
Yeah, totally. And then when I was little, I went to Germany when I was like 6 months old. I can't count that. But a year and a half ago, we went to Japan. We went to
What?
Tokyo and Okinawa, and that was great. I got to take my son and my wife, and we met up with friends that were stationed in Okinawa. They were there with the Air Force, so we got to stay with them for a week. And then we went and stayed on the mainland in Tokyo for a week as well. And that was amazing. I want to live in Tokyo.
How's that culture shock?
It's crazy. I think the culture shock is coming back because everyone's polite. Everyone, like, they don't even lock their bikes. People just leave their bikes on the street because everyone trusts each other. Everyone's nice. There's no one like pushing each other to get out of the way. It's just the greatest thing.
I've heard the food is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it was expensive. The food was like the really good food is really expensive, as in any city will be. But yeah, the food was great. I mean, the accommodations we stayed in Airbnb. It was like $80 a day for the place we were staying, and it's like in Shinjuku, so it was like the most like the Times Square of Tokyo. So I mean, you can get a place for pretty cheap. So traveling is not out of the realm of possibility for anyone if you really just look into it. So I know David's talking about it a lot, been wanting to travel. I think now's the time, man. You're at the age where traveling is like, now's when you got to do it because you have the energy to do it. You have the,
right.
Yeah, you have the ability now. You're going to get to an age where you're just going to be too tired to want to, find a new place and like carry your luggage through, downtown and all that. Like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I when I was younger, I didn't really go much of anywhere. My parents never took me anywhere. I think I've gone to Florida, and I've gone to, on my own accord, I've gone to like Maryland, New York, and Pennsylvania. But I think it's one of those things. It's just a matter of doing it the first few times, and then like anything, it's going in the first place is the difficult part. And then after you do the thing, you realize like, oh, this is just a normal fucking thing to do. So like, yeah. I want to introduce that to my son, like your dad did for you. And it made traveling the norm, like you said, he took you to Hawaii and things like that. And so I think I want to take my son with me because, I want him to just look at this as a regular part of life, because to me, it's so outlandish. It's very easy to push it to the back of my mind whenever I consider traveling. It's so easy, dude, to just be like, probably not. No big deal. Yeah. And because I've gone my whole life without traveling. So for me, I don't feel like I'm missing out, even though on some level I obviously do. It's a comfort zone thing where I can easily just resort back to like, nah, just ain't going to do that. Haven't done it before. What the hell am I going to do it now for? So I think it's important for him. Chase, how old's your son now?
He's 13. So when we went to Japan, he was just 11. It was right before his birthday.
Wow.
And it was really good to see it in his eyes. Like the wonder. He was just staring at things. We saw bullet trains and we saw palaces that have been there for thousands of years, and it's something you don't get here. So those things you have to travel for. Our country is
Right.
like 200 years old. If you want to see
Exactly.
something that's old, you have to go elsewhere. And
We're so deprived of history
Oh,
here.
God,
Like
yeah.
people don't respect that until you travel, until you have those experiences. When I traveled when I was around 11 with my dad to Europe for the first, that was what blew my mind and totally opened me up to other cultures and trying other food, and it really expanded me as a person. So I recommend that to anybody with kids. Like, yeah, find a way. There was somebody did an article about like, oh, if you do this or cut that out of your life or do this, like in a short amount of time you can save up vacation money.
Oh, for
But
sure.
it obviously takes sacrifice and making it a priority, and it's not for everybody too. Some people don't like it. Some people are homebodies and they just are not about that life, and I respect that too.
Right, but I think it is. I think there's so many people, maybe X amount that are homebodies and X amount that just don't pull the trigger on things, much like myself, because they're not accustomed to doing that thing. And like I said before, I imagine, because I've had a lot of experiences in my life where like the thing that I was worried about or maybe attached a lot of anxiety to, or maybe just had all these preconceived notions about, wasn't that at all. It wasn't what I built it up in my mind to be at all. And then once you do it, you're like, oh, this is just a normal thing. Like it's just moving your body from one distance to another. Yeah. And now you're in a different, in a different country or a different state or whatever the case is. And that's all it really took, was saving a bit of money and hopping on a plane, or saving a bit of money and getting in a car. That's it.
Isn't it funny how easy it is to like make excuses, and how the truth of it is 95% of the stuff you're worried about never happens, never comes to fruition. So
right,
you're sitting here creating this world and putting that out into the universe, and none of it ever happens. So it's you creating your own boxes and your own barriers instead of
it's like a trap.
A way you make excuses. That's
but
that's human nature.
Right. It's like there's some part of the brain that just wants to be left the hell alone. Like it's found a way to exist. Yeah. You found, psychologically, you found a way to exist with the minimum amount of trauma, and you want to keep it at that. Yeah. And anything that's outside of the norm represents like potential trauma or change of some sort. And so the brain puts up all these dumbass barriers to keep it from happening. And it's just, it's just a matter of, maybe comfort zones aren't bad if your comfort zone is, change and experience and traveling and learning different things. And like, if that's your comfort zone because that's what you've been reared in and that's what you've been, forged in your entire life, well, that's a perfectly fine comfort zone, but if your comfort zone is, like me, it's like I've barely left New Jersey. You know what I mean? And that's pretty whack as far as experience. I mean, I'm still young. I'm only 28 years old. So it's not like I don't have my life to live over 3 more times or some shit like that. But you know what I mean? So I still got time.
Well, and New York is a very cultured place too. So you can go just across the way and have experience with other cultures without, going too far from your house. That I found respect for that too, is that you don't have to travel across the world. Like San Francisco has like Little Italy and Little China and those places where you can go and you're really like in the culture for
100%. Chinatown is more China than it is Chinatown. Like it's like people say that, like you go there and it's you're in a different world altogether. And obviously like North Beach, Little Italy is a little different because it's not quite that extreme of a culture difference. But yeah, it's, if you want to be able to experience something, you have New York so close to you. I know that you can get there pretty easily for a day trip or a weekend trip or something like that. That's just, there's people that don't even have that. Like I grew up in the Midwest. The thought of going to New York is so far out of the minds of so many people. Like they just don't even have that chance. It's never going to happen. Like I grew up thinking like, oh, Times Square on New Year's Eve would be so awesome. Now that I've lived in a city, I know that sounds horrible. That sounds like the worst possible thing I could ever do in my life.
Absolutely.
For sure. So it's like, for sure. And that's the experience. Like when you live in a small town, you're like, that's going to be so crazy. Then you go there, you're like, no, it is crazy. You don't want to be a part of that. That's
not at all
insane. Yeah, for sure. So you do get a lot of different perspectives. And I think the thing is, like, you have a lot of fears built up. Oh, sorry about that. You have a lot of fears built up, but there's tourism built in. It's already like there. the plane routes are there, the hotels are set up. Like you're not the first person to make this trip, so it's not like you're forging a new path or doing something that's out of left field. You're going to be picking a hotel that 1,000 people in your shoes have been to, and they're going to know
Right.
exactly how to deal with someone in your situation. So it's like that's got to be gone. You got to forget about the fear and just like now you just got to figure out where you want to go.
I was thinking the other day, I think I was driving back from work, and the thought of travel dawned on me for a second, and one of my knee jerk reactions is like, it's too expensive. And then I stopped and I was like, I took the long path to this epiphany. I'll admit that, but the path that I took to this realization was like, if you're somebody who has a traveling business of sorts, whether it's the planes, whether it's the hotels, whether it's the attractions or the transportation, the cars and such, when you get to the place, you're obviously, if you're an intelligent business person, are looking at the potential demographic that can't afford it. And so obviously, there's a million ways that people have thought of to make it affordable. I'm just not looking hard enough. But like, no shit, Sherlock. People have thought about the fact that the mass of population can't afford some lavish, crazy lifestyle. And you think at some point somebody hasn't sat down and said, well, how do we make this affordable for like the average person? For sure,
for
that's
sure.
happened. So for sure it's out there. It's like I said, it's just this weird, it's odd how many psychological tricks your mind plays on you to keep you where you are. It's I don't know. It's hard to realize them when they're happening, but then when you do realize it, you kind of step back and you go, "Oh, you sneaky bitch. You're
Yeah,
trying
for
to
sure.
keep me from doing that thing. Why you
Yeah.
what is that?"
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. It's like there's budget hotels, there's budget motels, there's, you don't have to stay in the city center. You can stay a little bit off and, walk places rather than take a cab everywhere you go, and, maybe make a lunch rather than going to a restaurant in every place you go. But being there is more of an experience than, having to like take a taxi to a very nice restaurant. Just being in the city is a cool thing. And then on top of that, it's like even when you think of going to somewhere like Disneyland, you don't have to get the park hopper pass. You don't have to get into every place. You can just go and experience it with your kids, go to one of the places, just be like, this is our Disneyland this time. Maybe when we come back, we'll explore another part of Disneyland. And it's kind of, you can set it up that way where it sounds like you're going like, we're going to do this in installments rather than doing it all at once. So it's kind of
Right.
leaves something more to be desired as well. So I think it's well within your means. You just got to flip your brain on it.
You know what kind of puts this false representation of what the thing is as well is, I don't know if you guys watched the Fire documentary.
Oh, the Fire Fest?
Yeah, have you watched the one on Hulu?
Oh no, I watched the Netflix one.
Yeah,
I watched the Hulu one because it was my understanding that Fuck Jerry and his crew were the guys that are responsible for the Netflix documentary, which to me felt like they were trying to get ahead of and so I looked at Hulu because it came from a less biased point of view. It wasn't necessarily from the people that promoted the entire festival. It was an outside looking in type of a deal. And so, but what does, and it's something that everybody's aware of, but one of the things that it draws attention to is the fact that so much of these experiences that we all know, like traveling or going to, Disneyland or Disney World or anything like that, the representation of that experience that we see comes off of like social media and shit. And so it's this buffed up glamour shot version of the thing that makes it look unachievable because it's highly attractive people throwing stacks of cash, having experiences in turquoise water. And you look at them and you go like, oh, well, they're fucking there. If they're there, like I've never been in a space with somebody that looks like that. So like for sure I can't fucking go there. I can't do that. That doesn't have, so much of what we see when it comes to like vacation is I don't know, it's like you attach in your mind, like vacation means yacht, turquoise water, and beautiful women that you don't see in everyday life, and dudes throwing stacks of cash, and you know what I mean? Like it's just, and it's logically you diffuse that very quickly, but totally. I think unconsciously it's
same, there. Yeah, that's the same. You projecting that whether it's an image from Instagram or a video that you saw of what it like. I encourage you to just go places and experience them for yourself. Like, oh, I heard London was cool. Let me go check it out. And read a book or two on what sites might interest you. And everybody's different, right? Like you might not be into the pub crawl, but you might be totally into the free museums that are there. Or like everybody's going to have their own vibe, and you can't listen to me tell you, man, even me telling you like Hawaii's great. Like you might not want to go somewhere and chill on a beach. You might want to go somewhere like Europe and go like explore like history and like go to these amazing places and try fine dining and do all that, right? Like you might be in for a different type of adventure. So
Right.
I encourage you to go find that. Like pick out what seems exciting to you and like what's on your bucket list, and don't just throw out everybody's bullshit and go experience the place the way you want to see it. Because I have my own unique experiences. Even every time I've been back to the same city, like it's always something new. It's always changing and evolving. The people that you're there with, that's what makes the experience for me. Like you going with your son, that's what's going to be special and memorable. It doesn't matter whether it's Bakersfield or Barcelona, right? Like
Right.
Totally.
you can make amazing experiences wherever you're at. So
Yeah,
Joe,
and
go on. Chat.
I was just going to say, like, the fact that you are that close to New York City, there are people that travel from around the world to go to
Yeah.
New York City. It's right there. There's probably 1,000 different vacations you can take right there. Like,
Right.
there's 1,000 different Broadway shows. There's
it's
1,000
insane.
different
You're also
concerts.
close to
There's
like everything else. You're not that far from DC. That like you got trains that can take you around to some incredible. Like you talk about history in America, you're around American history. Like you can go see some dope places.
Right. My wife and I went to Princeton, and that was like, it's, I don't know how far it is from here, maybe around an hour or something like that. And I'll admit, like, in my mind, sometimes I think I know Jersey. I'm just like, what if people want to come to a place like this? Like, I know this place. Like, I don't want to. Why would you want to come here? And then I went to
Yeah, you get
Princeton, and I was
jaded.
like, yeah, absolutely. And I saw Princeton, and Princeton is like, a historical hotspot, and it's filled with all this old architecture and all this, all this art. This, Princeton has an art museum. Princeton campus is like insane. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and it does
World leaders
promote.
have went to school there. Like, it's top business people, world leaders. It's a famous place. Yeah, and it's right there.
And it does promote like walking around, because every single building is worth stopping and looking at. Every storefront is worth stopping and looking into. Every shop to get a coffee and a bagel is the strangest little place. And I guess it does. I think once again, it's one of those little pitfalls that the jadedness, the thinking that the place is just another little mechanism to keep you. It's a survival thing. It's got to be an evolutionary survival thing where back in the day, if you had everything you needed to survive, your brain's like, don't move, stupid.
Complacency
Stay right
is
here.
comfort. Yeah. Why would you go exploring, dude? What's crazy is to think about early man like exploring the United States, even like Lewis and Clark era, right? Like those guys
terrifying.
Trekking across, going somewhere where nobody's ever been. You don't know what kind of animals you're gonna run into, what kind of what peril. You got enough food to last you a week, maybe a couple weeks, and then you're oh well, I hope we find some food. Like that's some crazy like exploration. We don't have any of that anymore, right? Like the most uncharted territory right now is like the internet.
Right.
Yeah, and even crazier than that, there was no museums in Disneyland for them, when they got there. There was just
like, ooh, look, more trees.
So it's like they were like, so that's in us too. Like that exploration is in us too, as much as the settle down. There are the hunter and gatherers that try to stay close, but then there's also the explorers in the world that just want to get out and get new experiences. And when you went on that trip to Princeton, when you came home, there's a lot of benefits afterwards too. You have a renewed spirit. You and your wife were probably a little bit closer after that trip. You had those memories, and you can look back on those and go like, oh, that was a fun time. Even now, when you're talking about it, I could see your face lit up. You're like, that was a good time. It's like, that could happen every weekend if you just made a little trip. It could just be the next town over. You like go to the creek in the next town over and like throw rocks in the creek with your wife. Like that could be as simple as that.
Dude, when I was little, don't go on. Sorry, David.
I was just gonna say I can see that. Like I used to have that real drive for adventure, and like when I was younger, I wanted to go to like the Caribbean and be one of those people that dives off boats for whatever gold is left in the ocean floor, and whatever you find, you basically get to keep. Because I met a guy that had done that and then started a gold business, and it was really interesting. His story like blew my mind. And And I wanted to do that. I thought that was the coolest thing. And obviously that never happened, but I get that reminder of the sense of adventure because, like, for example, last summer, my wife was at a doctor's appointment or something like that. And so I took my son and I just threw him in the truck and I said, we're going on an adventure. And he goes, where are we going? And I'm like, don't worry about it, bud. We're going on an adventure. Then all I did was pull up to, I live on a mountain, so there's a lot of forest. And I just pulled up there's like a little lake and you could swim there, but you could also take a trail and it'll take you into the forest. And I just took him into the woods and just called it an adventure. And we climbed on rocks and played with sticks. And he has never stopped asking, can we, Dad, can we go on an adventure? Can we go on an adventure? And it reminds me, like, damn, there was a time where, I was, everything felt, I don't know when it happened. And it's like the saddest thing, but like somewhere along the line, it felt like there just wasn't anything worth exploring. And I think it was the complacency of just never having really done it. But in my late teens, early 20s, and everything before that, it was like, dude, we got to hop on this boat, man. Me and my buddies used to talk about, I remember my first dream car. My first dream car was to get myself like a Volkswagen hippie van so that I could back up to a lake and pop the doors open and cast a line, like go fishing straight from the back bumper. And that was my first dream car. Most dudes are like, I want a Ferrari, bro. I want a Porsche. I want this and that. And I was like, no, dude, I want a Volkswagen Beetle with shag carpeting so I could put my fishing rods in it. I could back up to this lake that I used to fish at when I was younger, and we could just sit there, we could smoke, and we could just cast lines straight from the back, right in the opening, and then, have like sandwiches laid out like right there with the hatch open. And, but then somewhere along the line, it was just like, I don't know, the complacency, the never having done it made it seem more and more unrealistic. And you know what the saddest part of this whole thing is? I live right by the lake now that I spent my childhood fishing at, and I never go fishing, bro. Yeah. I've gone fishing like a few times with my son, and that's like the best part. But for me, it's like, it's seeing my son fish that holds the thing for me now. But having fished myself, like it doesn't do anything for me. If I'm alone, I'd never do it. Catch your sonny, you toss him back. I don't know.
Can I have an unpopular opinion and say that fishing sucks, dude?
Yeah,
it is kind of whack.
It's so boring.
It's so whack. I mean, unless you're with somebody who's like an amazing fish, like that. I'm sure it's fun when you're a kid or taking your kid to go experience it. Like I went to the place where it's like a fish farm, and like you literally just dip your pole in, and because the fish are starving and there's 8,000 of them, you catch one every
that's
time.
not fun, right?
But it's not fishing, and I even now, like looking back, like those are fun, like fishing memories, but fishing's not like, dude,
it's a fucking bummer.
Yeah,
it really is more about who you're with.
Stuff. There's fun stuff to do.
What was cool though was like, I don't know how my son did it, but it was like every time he casted, he would catch a fish. Like I would cast for him, I'd hand him the thing, he'd immediately catch a fish. And the best part was like having him reel it in, watching him get excited, and then like making him hold the fish. Like we'd take the hook out, he'd hold it by the mouth. I'd pinch his little fingers together and he'd look at it, and then he'd look at the camera, we'd take a picture, and then, I made him kiss it, even though it's a dirty bass from a lake. I made him kiss it on the head.
I was going to ask that, and I thought it would be weird because I always did that when I was a kid. I always kissed the fish before I threw it back because I felt bad for hurting it.
Having just jousted him in the mouth with a barb, and then you kiss him and you send him on his way, and that was the coolest thing. But you have a little girl.
That's why you're not
Joe?
A fisherman.
I do. I have a little 1-year-old girl. I look forward to all that stuff, man. All the firsts, all the getting to go fishing, and we've been to Disneyland now and done some fun stuff together. Like it totally opens it. We're all dads here, right? So it totally
this is that daddy cast.
That dad crew. But it totally opens up your life and your world from like complacency. You talk about like when you get a little bit older and you're kind of just in your groove of things, and maybe you're trying to find your way with work or with whatever, but then all of a sudden you have a kid and your whole world changes, and your perspective, it makes things fun again. Like, oh, this is the first time my kid's going to try a pear or whatever it is.
Everything,
like,
anything.
You get to experience that with them, and that I love those moments. And my daughter's in love. You talk about adventure, like she wants to leave the house and go see stuff, and she just went to Hawaii and went to New Mexico and has already been on a couple adventures, and she's just soaking it all in. It's amazing to watch a human grow from, a little lump of flesh that does nothing all day to like a person, it's amazing.
Yeah, well, Chase is over there with a 13-year-old. I mean, I could
Yeah,
pretty
at
vividly
13,
remember what I was
they
like.
then become another lump of flesh that does nothing. So it's like they go through a cycle where it's
Full
like
circle.
I just hear sounds come from his room and I go by and it's just like him laying on it, like half on his bed, half on the floor, looking at his like Switch, playing video games. Like he's just a
Nice.
lump, just laying there. Like it's a
What's he
lot of
playing
his
on the
life. But
Switch?
he just went through Breath of the Wild and he started it back over and wanted to make sure he got everything because he just
All
kind of
right.
blew through it. So he's going back through step by step and doing it. And we also got him a drum set for his birthday last year, like
Oh,
an electronic
wow.
drum set. So
You regret that?
no, it's electric. So he's in his room. All we hear
Oh,
is like
Thump, 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 thump.
it's just like that.
That's
I mean,
cool.
that kind of gets annoying after a while, but it's cool hearing rhythms
yeah.
come out of our 13-year-old kid's room. We'll just be sitting here and I'll like, oh my god, I think that's Green Day that he's playing, and I'll go in
Right.
there. And I'm like, what are you playing? He's like, it's called Holiday by Green Day, and I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. And he's like
Yeah.
discovering all these songs just going through Spotify. Like he'll play like Avenged Sevenfold, and then he'll be like, what sounds like this? And he'll play the next band and try to play along with it. And it's really crazy. And that's
It's
what the,
funny.
like you get that discovery moment from birth until forever. It's like there's always
Yeah.
something new to discover. I mean, that's how it was when we went to Japan. It was so many looks in his face of just like, this is like, these are possibilities. People can be different. Like you just don't even, if you're in the same place all the time, like everyone here says hella and wears Giants jerseys. Like that's all the people here do. So when you don't get out of your environment, even if it's simple as that, like he sees people in different clothes, he sees people talking different, people being polite, holding doors open for people. You might not see that in your hometown. So it's just a lot of little things like that where kids need to see that. I think that starting early, taking your kid on that little adventure is just like starting that spark in his mind of just, oh, there are things outside of my everyday life. I can be
Right.
like Joe was saying, the spontaneity of his dad was great for him as a kid. Where it's like dad was like, let's go somewhere. Like that's so much fun for a kid. It's like, whoa, my dad can be surprising. Like I thought my dad was boring. I thought he was just a
Right.
dude. My dad's surprising. He does fun things. It brings you closer. At the end of it, it's going to be good for you. I'm excited
Those
to
are
see
the
where you
things
go.
those are the memories that hang with me when I think back to my childhood, right? I remember little stuff in between and baseball games and soccer and whatever, as a kid, but the stuff that really resonates were those adventurous moments, those last spur of the moment trips and things like that just, or the trips to Europe, or the things that just, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. So I think there's something to that, making those special moments to get away and making it a priority. Like Chase said, it doesn't have to be a 13-hour flight to be an adventure.
The weirdest thing happened to me the other day, and Chase, I think I might have mentioned this to you and Nathan. I'm not really too sure, but I was, I had this dream, right, where dreams are always so weird and ethereal, and it's hard to like kind of pin them down, and I never put like a whole lot of stock in them, but every once in a while you have one that's like, what the fuck was that, man? And I've got dreams knocking around in my head that I've remembered since I was like I have a dream from when I was like 3. I had dreams from when I was like 13, 16. There's like 4 pivotal ones, like really strange ones. But this one was like, I can see like this rooftop party. It was like some city and there's a rooftop party, and then it's cool when it's a rooftop party, right? And I can't explain like where my point of view is. It doesn't make sense. I'm like in the sky or something, but I'm watching this rooftop party. Next thing you know, I acknowledge that I'm not the only one watching this. There's children that are watching this with me, and then next thing you know, I'm in like a kitchen, and with these kids now I can see them. We've all got bodies, and I can see them, and these kids are so hung up over the fact that party was, they're like in middle school maybe or elementary. No, they're in elementary school. So they're so hung up that party was the cool kids in their school. That's what that party was. This dream is the cool kids from their school were having a party on this rooftop, and they're complaining to me, and I'm going, man, because they're kind of like not the coolest kids. And I'm like, man, you guys want to have a cool party? We can have a cool party. Let's set this place up and we'll invite everyone and we'll have a cool party, right? I'm trying to make these kids feel good. And I'm like, you got to get rid of this. And it's like old children's toys. because we're in a kitchen and they're scattered with children's toys. I'm like, listen, man, cool kids, they don't have this car with a yellow top that you put your feet in. You know, they don't have like all this weird crap. And then all of a sudden I look over and on the table there's like a stuffed animal. And I'm like, listen, man, you got to get rid of Mr. And I say whatever his name is, Mr. Bobo or some shit, right? Then all of a sudden I realize that Mr. Bobo belongs to one of these kids, and one of these kids is my son. And he's like 6 or 7 years old, right? And I realize that getting rid of Mr. Bobo means that he's not a little boy anymore. Dude, it's screwing me up right now.
So wait, let me recap.
Go on, please.
David's throwing a party for 6 and 7 year old children.
Yes.
Then he wants them to think that he's cool.
No.
And then David's
I'm pretty sure that's
Bobo,
what you said.
And then David's friend Bobo comes to the party and kind of fucks shit up. And so David
I think Bobo's a metaphor for
to
sure.
save the children from Bobo.
Bobo was not my friend, okay? Bobo was a non-existent stuffed animal friend of my child who suddenly was one of these kids. And I realized, I go, oh no, he's all grown up now.
What made you throw the party for the children?
Because I felt bad for them that all the cool kids were having a party that they weren't invited to. Essentially, is the premise of this dream. Like, it was like a weird little clip.
Reliving your childhood.
Tell your kids to come over to my house and have a cool kids party.
That would have been a lot easier, but instead I was like, throw out all your childhood bullshit, you little nerds. So all of a sudden, like I said, I realized that this means that he's grown up.
Wait, I have to clarify. Bobo is not your penis, right?
No. God damn, you guys are fucking this up.
I just have to clarify.
He was like a stuffed sock monkey. You know those sock monkeys?
This is not helping.
I had to get Bobo away from these children.
Exactly.
Bobo was highly inappropriate.
The whole party.
Bobo was enraged.
The point of this story was I started crying while I'm hugging this kid. Like, it's my son. I'm on the kitchen floor now. I'm
just making sure.
He's 7 years old in front of his friends. I'm holding him and I'm crying hysterically. I wake up 4 a.m. and we're actually all in the living room sleeping because my ceiling had fallen apart because of some air conditioning issue and they were doing drywall. But either way, all the stuff had been moved into the living room. So we're sleeping on the mattress, and on the side, on the couch is my son. And I'm just laying there and I'm thinking about what happened, and I start ugly face crying by myself at 4 a.m. just crying like hysterically. God. And then I wake up later. I fall back asleep. I wake up at like, whatever time it is, 7 a.m. And I turn to my wife and I go, I told her the horrible story that I just told you. She also made fun of me for Bobo the penis monkey or whatever. And then I said, but the point of the dream was he wasn't my little buddy anymore. I couldn't even say that without hysterically crying again. And my son's looking at me.
That is so sweet.
As I ugly face cry, dude, I don't know what it was like. The most emotional, painful fucking thing was suddenly I was casted into the future where my son was. I missed everything.
Dude.
I missed everything.
Really happens. Wait till it really happens.
I can't. It hurts so bad. It's like I don't know. Like, I know one day he's not going to be my little buddy anymore. But like, I feel like I'm going to force it on him.
Oh yeah, you
like,
are.
No, you little bitch. We're gonna wrestle, and you're gonna love it. And
yeah, totally.
It's just unacceptable.
In the future, don't have wrestling be a part of your children's parties, though. It's probably better that you.
For sure. Wrestling other kids is not. It's not a good idea.
You're welcome to consult with us anytime you plan a party.
Well,
we can tell you what is. Party. Yeah, especially the cool kids party.
We'll advise you.
You have to remember this was the uncool kids party.
Yeah, they were the cool kids though. It was like super bad. We're like, they were trying to be cool. So I was buying them liquor, I was giving them drugs, and telling them to get rid of their children's toys. That's
and
how
they were 7. You said they were 7.
No, I didn't
years
say
old.
that they were 7.
You did. You said
so-
your son was. You said your son was there with his
100%
friend.
dead.
He was 7 years old, and you were
So-
buying them. You were buying them alcohol. You were getting the kids drugged and liquored
Listen,
up.
you can't. This isn't
at your
incriminating. This is a dream. do
By
you
the way,
guys
it was
have?
pretty
David,
real
don't-
to
don't
you.
don't call the police and tell them this dream.
This is a
telling you
live
right
stream.
now.
We have to. Skype right now. Somebody in Skype is dialing 911, which I actually did the other day, and I just want to.
Oh,
If you
that
listen
was a
to
funny
the
story.
last podcast, yeah, I accidentally
I
called the
did. I
police.
caught that story. Yeah.
You know how embarrassing that was?
Yeah,
It's
I
very
love the
embarrassing.
part where you're like, stay inside. I'll go out and take care
I'll
of this.
handle this.
Which is literally the worst possible thing you could do because
Yeah,
it looks
you couldn't
so
have made
suspicious.
yourself look more guilty than if you walked outside and you're like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Just a big smile.
Yeah.
I agree.
You'll never get me, coppers.
Oh my
Like,
god! I
whoa,
should-
dude, this guy-
Wiping the blood from the steak you're
Dude,
cooking off with your hands.
he was not buying it. You could tell by looking in that dude's eyes. He was like, "Oh yeah, okay." So you told your buddies you were gonna call the cops, and you thought that, and then you called the cops, and then you hung up real fast. Oh, okay,
You
right.
told
And
your
the
friend from
podcast
England.
the
that you were-
podcast you listen to is called Your Mom's House. Huh? That's
Yeah. One day when I was going to work, there was like a bunch of ice, and there was a bunch of accidents on the way down the mountain. Because that's how crazy the weather is here sometimes. We had black ice like all the way down the mountain, and there was like 5 cars off in ditches as you went down. It was like a graveyard. But before I started my journey down the mountain, the cops were there, and they were like, if you don't have to go, don't go. Right. And so when I pull up and it's my turn to talk to the cops, I just turn the volume down. And he's like, listen, man, do you really have to go to work? Like, you should turn around. And I was like, I ain't got no more PTO. So, yeah, I got to go to work. And he's like, all right, man, well, just be really careful. Take it slow. And before he leaves, he goes, wait a second. Is that Joe Rogan? And I'm like, yeah, dude. And he's like, yeah, dude. He like fist bumps me and everything. Like,
That's awesome.
it's always cool when you run into a podcast fan out in the wild, you know,
Fan.
especially when it's a cop. Like, what? This is cool. Do I get a PTA card or not a PTA card? What do I get out of
Get
jail
out of
free
jail
card?
free card.
There you go.
PTA, that's a really random. But yeah, I had a very similar. We got into a lift once, and I heard Joey Diaz's voice, and I was like, "Is that Joey Diaz?" And the guy goes, "Oh, I am so sorry." Realized that he was listening to the church picking up a lift, which could be very bad. That could really go bad for him. And I was like, "No, leave it." And he was super
Please.
pumped to be able to turn up the church of what's happening now
That's
while
awesome.
doing his job. So that's great. Yeah, we just laughed together, and it was a really good episode. I think it was like I can't remember the guest, but they were just blitzed. It was ridiculous.
He
Which is-
tried to have Jake Ellenberger on again, and it was like, I listened to the first 20 minutes, and I was like, is he still mega high? Like, it was like he couldn't talk. But I think Joey's gotten to
Yeah.
this point now where it's almost better for him to do solo, because he really is like this this old wise relative. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because of Joey Diaz, I call people that, you know, were a part of my life, especially when it comes to old friends. I call
Yeah.
them, and I'll trap
Awesome.
them on the phone, bro, for like a half an hour to an hour, and I'll just
He's-
shoot the shit with them.
He's a really good storyteller, and he's lived
Mhm.
a fun, interesting, story-filled life. So that's the best part of the church for me, is those stories and the ones that pop up because of the guests and whatever. But yeah, it's not his interviews don't inspire me to like the same way like a Rogan podcast and his interview style does, but his storytelling is second to none, dude. I love
Yeah.
it. And I that's why I want to go see him live. I've heard it's kind of, he just takes you on that journey with him. Yeah, I heard
That and
he's-
his
I heard he's
values, you know, the things that he puts up on his list of important things. A lot of them are things that just like, they're kind of like no duh, but when you hear somebody say them, like I said, the calling people thing was like something that I didn't. There was so many relationships that I've had throughout my life with people that just kind of like, you know, eventually you just stop talking to them and life goes on. And I started thinking like, well, why not just call them? Like, whoever said the door was shut, just call them up, say hi, check in on them, see how their life is. And the more and more I do it, number one, the more and more I realize nobody else does that shit. And also it's like, I don't know, you just never know what somebody's going through. And you can tell it feels good when people are like, oh shit, you were thinking about me. which is
Well,
cool.
in a world of like online connections and everybody's, even staying in touch with your friends via social media or whatever, it's really nice sometimes to get a phone call or a
Hmm.
text message or to see somebody that you know in person, because
Right.
we are also built on human interactions. Like we talked earlier about like human nature, right? Like complacency is part of that, because you want that safety, but we're
Yeah.
also a social being and we want to be part of a bigger group. And it's one thing to be part of society, but it's another to have like real bonds and connections. I believe that joy shared is doubled, and pain shared is cut in half. I've always loved that quote, and I believe that to
That's
be
really
true.
good.
Like, yeah, like nothing is ever as bad when you're sharing it with somebody, and nothing is ever as good if you're there by yourself. It's like go travel on your own and you'll
Exactly.
get a bunch of great memories, but when you go travel with somebody, you have shared experience and great memories. And it's like I enjoy watching a movie by myself on Netflix from time to time, but it's so much better when there's somebody there to like talk to about it or engage with.
Oh,
Right.
for sure. And it's the same. It goes back to the fishing thing. It's the experience is way more better when there's someone there to go through it with you, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know,
I'm super guilty of like I now that you've said that, it makes me feel a little bit better about the tendencies that I have, because one of them is like anything that I experience that is good, I will try to wrangle everybody that I know into that experience. Like when I first walked into an MMA gym, I asked every single one of my friends to go with me. I even managed to drag a few of them to a jujitsu class or something like that, and it never wound up sticking. But like anything that I've ever done, as soon as I find out that it's good, dude, I all I want to do is tell everybody that I know about it, and then beg them to come with me and do a thing. You have no idea how many people I if there's any similarity between me and Joe Rogan, it's that I think everybody should have a podcast. I tell everybody to start a podcast. Anybody who can carry a conversation should have a fucking podcast, because to me it's not about like you're going to get big and you're going to get famous. It's like some sort of a release. It's like a psychological release. Like
Totally.
as much as I like having guests, there is something that I enjoy about doing the solo episodes. It feels different because it's almost like a verbal diary. Like it's just getting my thoughts out in a way that like, thoughts. It's funny. Somebody said something. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was like in line with the thought that I had. It's weird how sometimes there's like synchronicities in life where you're
Oh
thinking
yeah.
about a thing, and then all of a sudden something comes along and mentions that, and it's so obscure. You're like, God, that's weird. Like it's so out of left field that would come up. But the idea was, I got high the other day, and it was like a little extreme because it's been so long that since I smoked, it felt like my mind was like running through every possible scenario about anything that could ever happen all at once. But what I realized about that was like, and I'm the observer of those thoughts. And so I'm not the thoughts. The question is like, what is the part of me that's listening to those thoughts and looking at them and going, holy fucking shit. Like, it almost feels like it's a separate, it almost is like your brain is a supercomputer and you're the dude at the keyboard going like, what the fuck, and so it, for the
Yeah, they
first
did just
time.
bring that up on a podcast, didn't they? The like think which podcast was that where they said like think of the person that's I think it was Killer Mike. Was it
Yep,
something
I
to that
think it was
effect?
Killer Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
well,
He's like,
that's
And
there's
that's
got to be
cool, but
when you
have
think
you
of the
guys?
crazy thoughts, you have to think that there's someone sitting there having those crazy thoughts.
I
So
just
you're not,
had that
yeah,
thought
you're not the
like a
crazy
week
thought.
ago.
You are the person having the crazy thought. So there is stillness there. You just have to find it.
Yeah, and it's very bizarre because I never stopped to think of myself like, I had smoked a lot of weed from like 16 to I guess my mid 20s, and then it stopped, and it's been stopped for like a couple of years. And um and since I grew up with it, I never had those like epiphanous moments with it, really, because I was so used to having it as part of my psyche that I didn't notice a change. So not having done it for a long time and then smoking made me suddenly have like a little epiphanous moment where I was like, dude, these thoughts are crazy. Dude, I'm not these thoughts. What? Like
But that's
it
and that's your intention going into it too, right? Like if you're just smoking to get a little high to blow off some steam or what, you're not going to have some grand moment or connection to anything greater than yourself. But like if you go through a ceremony and take ayahuasca or DMT in order to get in touch with your inner self, whatever you want to call it. It's if you plan to go on a spiritual journey, you're a lot more likely to go there than
Right.
if
For
you're
sure.
just getting high with your buddies. So
Yeah.
I think that so much of it is your intention going into, like, I took these drugs because I wanted to feel this way. I wanted to go on this drug trip, so I ate these magic mushrooms.
Right.
And now let's see where this ride, takes us. That's a different animal than just, your daily wake and bake.
Yeah, I mean, you can speak to that more, Joe. Is that in yoga you do the same thing? You set your intention at the beginning of the exercise. You want, like, you could just go through the motions and get stretched out and feel good, but you can make it a lot more if you set an intention of clearing your mind and becoming more focused. And maybe you do get a little off balance, but you will, if you focus on that part of you that is still, your whole body will react to that and you will become still. It's like you have to just let that all go right past you. Let all those crazy thoughts flow right through you, and just, you can see the thoughts and just let them go. Like, go, there's that thought that I keep having. Like, oh, bye, see you later.
I had a teacher in a class, and it was kind of like in that moment of meditation when like the class is over, you're exhausted, you're kind of in that blissful state, and the person was like, okay, now a lot of people think about meditation as like clear your mind of everything, and it's like, it's not really like that. Imagine your thoughts like they're clouds, and they kind of come and go, and they dissipate into the distance. And yes, you observe that they're there, but you don't engage with any of them. You are, like you said, the observer of that. So you in that moment separate yourself from those thought processes, from that, and in that moment is when you find those amazing connections or euphoria or whatever you want to call it. It's a pretty profound thing to be able to separate yourself. There's fun meditation techniques like focusing on one object, right? Like focus on an orange. Think about an orange. Think about the look of it, the color of it, the shape of the orange, right? Now imagine like you could smell that orange, or you could whatever, right? Like, and you start focusing on this one thing, and everything else goes away. You're not thinking about your day at work or whatever else. Now you've put yourself on this orange, and then when you're done, you can kind of let go of the orange and then be in that space of
David, let go of your orange, man.
Let go of the orange, man.
When I was younger, and I was
that says a lot coming from two orange people.
I know. Well, that's why I thought he looked at you and he thought that. That's what that
spilled
was.
Water on my face.
When I was younger, it's interesting that you said the whole think of your thoughts as clouds, and then you kind of like made this motion with your hands, because the only experience with meditation that I've ever had was like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like homeless and I was squatting in some abandoned house and it was dark and I couldn't go to sleep. And so I like decided to just sit there and stare at, the back of my eyelids. And it was like, if you do that, there's like this kind of like these clouds of color, kind of. That's not really color. It's very vague, but it's different than pitch black. It's like expanding and contracting, globular, like purple, shades of purple maybe. And so what I'm doing is I'm staring at it, and I probably was high, and what I did was I like focused on one point, only one point, instead of looking around at behind my eyelids at all these moving color blobs. I just stared at one point, and eventually it felt like my body or my mind, my eyes would like zoom in. It felt like it was like if you were pinching and opening it up, and suddenly it became more and more clear. And the longer I did that, the more the clouds went away. And the next thing you know, and I could still do it to this day, and it doesn't serve any purpose and nothing happens. But it's like I'll get to a point where I'm seeing stars. I'm just seeing stars, and it looks like outer space, and it looks like you're wheeling through them. And I could do that entirely sober. I could do that tonight before I go to bed. I could sit there because I know how to do it now, because was that a real thing? And I went back and did it a bunch of times, and I've been doing it since I'm like 19 years old. And now I know if I just pick a pinpoint, and I stare at that point, my eyes will literally, this sounds so stupid, will like start to tremble, and they actually kind of go up. It's not like you're looking straight. It's like you're looking up. Like if your eyes are closed, but you're looking up like that because you're broken. And and it's actually physically taxing. Like it feels like exhausting. And if you think about it, it stops. It all goes back to the clouds of color. But if you somehow don't think about it, you're in stars. I know. Okay, I know.
I mean, that's the case right now. If you don't think about it, you're in stars.
You're
man.
in stars. You know
Dude,
what's a weird?
if you really think about it, we're all just star dust. That's
Oh,
the
I don't think about that. You know what other? Well, you know what we definitely don't think about is deja vu. It happens all the goddamn time, and we just go, "Well, whatever." But it's the only feeling that everybody recognizes. Like, oh, it feels like I've literally been here before at this point in time. That's the most bizarre feeling. How
Totally.
is that a feeling?
No,
How is
I think I
how-
understand it. I think it's your anxiety. You know how your brain goes through 1,000 different scenarios of what could be happening. You're sitting there going like, well, I know that if I say this, this is going to happen. If I say this will happen. Your brain's going through 1,000 different scenarios a minute. You don't even realize it. And so when that happens in real life and you're not conscious of those thoughts
you're like,
you were
oh
having,
my, I already
yeah, you're
visited
like,
this shit.
I think I've already happened. This already happened. Yeah, 1,000 times in your brain, but you're not connecting it there. That's
I
what
don't
I think
buy
it is.
that.
I
It's
think
too
there's
funky.
things that here's the thing. I think
Also,
that
we
there's
live in a
things that
simulation.
we don't understand about human consciousness, the way it works, and what we're really capable
We're going
of.
deep.
No, if you want to go deep, I'm
Oh, I want to go deep, bruh.
I'm fascinated by like dreaming, right? Lucid dreaming and where we go when we sit there. I heard I think it was a comedian did a bit about like how crazy is it that the entire world, everybody just turns off, right? For 6 to 8 hours a night. They're gone. They're not here anymore, but they're living somewhere else in a consciousness, in a dream state, wherever that is, that feels real, right? You have these memories, they come
Dude,
back. It's like a
6-year-old birthday parties and like,
and if
yeah,
have you ever had lucid dreaming where your consciousness meets up with the fact that you know you're dreaming and you can control it, dude? So that's where
I don't want to do that.
I've had lucid dreams where I realize in the moment I'm dreaming, and I am now the master of my domain. I've flown in
He-Man.
dreams. I've breathed underwater, done some amazing stuff because I knew it was a dream in the moment. I'm like, oh, this isn't real. I'm dreaming right now. And so now I can do whatever I want. So I go into like superpower mode where I'm like, I could literally control this universe. It's amazing. It's fun
I can't
stuff.
do that because of the Hat Man. The sleep paralysis demon will like 100% F me in the A, bro. It's not.
That's
creepy. Once I'm there, once I know like anything is a dream, all of a sudden it's and my body locks up and there's some dude and I'm like, fuck, it's that dude
so
again.
terrifying.
Dude,
Bro.
that sounds horrible.
Yeah, you
There
chatted
is
us one
nothing-
morning. You were like, hey guys, just was stuck in a 30-minute sleep paralysis episode. I'm like, well, that
a
sounds
couple of
terrifying.
days ago, I had sleep paralysis. I fought it off, and I woke up and I just like grabbed my wife's hand because she has like she knows when I'm there, and she can like it's one of the most beautiful things, one of the most underrated things about our relationship because sleep paralysis is the most terrifying thing that you could ever go through. I think I've never experienced anything crazier than it, and
I would imagine you think you're dead. Like you wake up.
It's not that you
open
think
your
you're
eyes,
dead.
You're like, oh, you're dead.
It's that you're frozen, you're completely paralyzed, breathing is really hard to do, and there's a fucking supernatural intruder who is visible.
And
Bro.
But that's that's everybody's experience who has that, right? It's not that the little demon, that's like a part of every single person's.
There's like 3 characters. There's like, if you're really going into, there's like 5 characters. But if you boil it down to it, there's 2 main characters. And if you really boil it down to it, there's one big bad motherfucker.
How much boiling is happening?
Yeah,
in this,
dude.
There's a lot of boiling. So this is probably the craziest thing is. So my grandmother, she was like hyper spiritual, had a crystal ball, fucking thought she was abducted by aliens, all this shit. And I never really got to spend a lot of time with her, but she was like the sweetest person in the world. And she passed. I actually used to call her mom. And she passed away. And it's like I think about her once a week, even though she passed away when I was 5. And so but she had this book that she told my mom not to read because of some terrifying shit that if you read the book, you were going to find it out, and it applied directly to her life or whatever. And so I asked my mom, like, oh, what was the book called? And my mom was like, well, I never read it, but it's called this, which is like, super irresponsible. So I ran out and I got the book, right? Now, before I tell you about the book, I have to preface it with,
I don't really want to know about this. Can I preface this? Like,
no, the book is actually, in hindsight,
I don't want any part of your curse, David.
Yeah, dude, this is getting kind of creepy.
It's creepy, bro.
don't learn about this. And I thought,
Right.
I should
And I
go
thought,
learn about
for
this.
sure.
My
Hey,
crazy witch grandma said that I
And
should.
then I told all of my friends.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So when she passed away, shortly after that, I moved because my mom started talking to some guy, and very abruptly, my life was uprooted, and we moved into his house. And his mom became like my grandmother, and so she would tell me these stories very irresponsibly because I was a child of her sleep paralysis episodes. But she didn't know it was called sleep paralysis. She said, "David, sometimes I wake up and I can't move, and there's a demon, David." And she was not Jewish at all. And she would tell me, that's my voice for all David. That's my voice for all old women. So David, he'll be standing there, and I can't move, and I can't scream, David, and I could see him, but I could slowly pull the blankets over my eyes.
So that sounds like this was subconsciously implanted into your mind at a young
Well,
age.
that's funny that you should say that. Let me continue. So, she has this episode from childhood where her sister shares a bedroom with her and her mother doesn't. Her sister and her see it in the same night, and her mother sees it in that same night. Right? So she tells me these stories. They're terrifying. Absolutely. I continue my life. I never see it. This doesn't happen to me. Right? I had one, well, whatever. So anyway, I'll get into that. It's a silly non-event, really. But so fast forward, my real grandma's dead. My not real grandma has told me some terrifying stories. Eventually,
What?
Yeah.
What kind of fast forward is that? Yada yada yada. Grandma's dead.
Terrible.
I told you grandma died in the beginning, right? And this was not grandma. So now I'm like 18 years old. My mom goes, here's a book. You know, grandma said, don't read it, have fun. So I go to Barnes and Nobles.
Everybody's dead. And
Everybody's
they
dead.
left me this cursed book.
No, I went and found the book. You can find it. I found it in Barnes and Nobles. I stole it from Barnes and Nobles. It was it's called Communion by Whitley Strieber.
Part of your curse. Okay, go on.
Right. Rogan has actually talked about this book. So, you know, talk about coming full circle, but he thinks it's fucking bullshit. And I think it is bullshit. I think it was what's the word? It was blown out of proportion. It was made fantastic. You know, it was you know, so a little bit of exaggeration there.
It's a hoax. It's superstition.
Right. So I'm reading this book. It's about, he thinks that he's being abducted by aliens. But what he describes is what David, that lady, described, and what my actual grandmother described, which was being paralyzed and having these shadow creatures come and visit you or whatever. But my grandmother thought she was being abducted by aliens, and my not grandmother lady thought she was being visited by demons. So I go, wow, how weird is that these two women who are grandmother figures in my life are having the same experience. So I start to look into it, and I find people describing the dude that my grandmother saw, because she always described him as like being in a duster coat with a flat brimmed hat, but all of a silhouette, right? So he's like affectionately called the Hat Man. And I start to ask people in my everyday life, like, have you ever had this experience? Turns out my dad has it like all the time. Like he's you know, fucking cursed. Like he sees them all the time. All the time he wakes up to a man with a brimmed hat and a duster coat. It happens.
So it runs in your family.
Kind of, until you find out that thousands and thousands and thousands of people have seen this Hat Man character.
Real quick though.
Go on.
Since Cosby went to jail, have these stopped?
No, they've gotten worse.
Just making sure. Oh,
he keeps showing up.
So we know it's not him.
It's not definitely not Cosby. It can't be.
Could you imagine Cosby in a duster and a flat-billed hat?
I would
scary.
beat the shit out of that.
David, I wouldn't worry too much because it sounds like this is happening to a lot of people, and we're in the time of Me Too now. So it's only a matter of time before somebody
hashtag Hatman, hashtag Me Too. Yeah, it's only a matter of time.
He's going to turn him in, and
he never touches anybody. Oh, he does.
Twitter news.
Right, he does choke you sometimes, and now that I think about it, it did feel sexual, and then you kind of pass out.
So you and the Hat Man get sexual on how often would you say this happens?
I've only seen him like one time.
Is this ever after your recurring children's dream party? Is it kind of
no? That wasn't recurring. That was one cry fest. Okay, that wasn't recurring. But the time that I did see, I get sleep paralysis, but I'm aware of what it is that, because when you just wake up and your body's paralyzed, and it's like, it feels like it's being electrocuted, but your brain is functioning properly. So like, I'll literally wake up and be like, son of a bitch, god damn it, here we are. And now it's this exhausting task of like, try to move like Uma Thurman, wiggle your big toe.
Oh yeah.
Wiggle.
That's crazy.
You start with the small extremities. It's like, get your fingers to move. Get your fingers, and if you can get your fingers to move and articulate, then eventually, you can get out of it. But
has there been any scientific study on people who have this, that like any actual reputable studies that have been done?
It's pretty easily casted away. It's like your body goes into a partial paralysis so that you don't act out your dreams.
Yeah,
that happens every night. It's just that some people have this thing where your brain will wake up before your body does, and it's just a little bit of time until then. But you do get stuck in it for a ridiculous amount of time sometimes. Like you could be there for like a half an hour, which is exhausting. That's him. Yeah, that's the guy. But stop it.
Legit, I typed in Hat Man and it said during sleep paralysis, like it finished the sentence for me. So it's
dude, it's
all
that big
pictures
of a deal.
of the same guy on Google when you search it.
That's crazy.
Oh, I've heard some absolutely fucking terrible. Like, my stories are mild. I've heard some stuff that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you not do that?
Like,
as I'm doing all this research, because that's what I call it, and I'm like, 19, 20 years old, I'm like, I'm gonna have this thing happen to me because I'm diving into it. I'm gonna see this because I'm stupid and I'm thinking about it so much. Not that I'm gonna summon the Hat Man, but like, I'm gonna just have a nightmare essentially. And so, lo and behold, it comes. It's fully expected. I wake up. I'm paralyzed. I literally go, fuck. Well, here we are. Okay. And then I know the things that happen next because I've read about them nonstop, but they happen like nonetheless. All of a sudden, some fucking dude walks into the room. And I go, oh shit, what? And I go straight into terror. Even though I'm fully there and I'm like, God damn it, this is the thing. I knew it was going to happen. Unbelievable terror strikes you. Terror like it's the end of your life. Like, you're going to die. You're going to die, right?
That sounds awful.
Dude, it is awful. So my body locks up even tighter. I'm completely terrified. And all of a sudden I black out, right? I come back to, I'm somehow on the other side of the bed. I was dating this.
Are your pants still on?
No, I don't know. I couldn't see them because you can't even lift your head. But I'm by the girl that I was dating at the time. I'm suddenly by her feet, right? So I grab them. I start sucking them, right? No big deal.
What the?
So
of
I'm
course,
yeah. I'm by her feet.
As
Everything looks the same. Everything looks the same. The room is normal, but I'm on the opposite side of the bed. And all of a sudden, some inexplicably bright light comes from a closet where there is no light, and it's like burning my eyes. It's filling the whole room. The whole room's getting whiter and whiter and whiter, and then I pass out. When it's like the bright light, the shadow people, like, that's abduction shit. I was paralyzed. There was a bright light coming through the window. There was little shadow people.
Totally.
I'm not convinced that the government's not doing experiments on you, and these are just the men in black. And so they hit you with their little ray, their little they trips you out, gets you paralyzed, and then they walk in there. They have their way with you. They insert things, into places and figure out whatever they need to figure out, and then they leave you be.
They've been doing it for so long. It's like, what do you need to figure out about my butt anymore? You guys didn't get it the first 10 times.
No, dude. Sometimes it's
the mysteries of the butt.
Think about what we do to rats. Do you think
it's the root chakra?
Think about like the experiments that get done on rats. Do they draw their blood once to check it out, or do you think they do it like once a week?
I don't know, but why do you got to be so ominous about it? You think that's what rats see?
Dude,
just like some big dude in a trench coat just rolls up, right?
I don't want to imagine what a lab rat sees or thinks about, or the terror that they live in, dude. But it's also like, gotta do it. I wonder if you had a list of shit that we figured out because of rats, how quickly you would be like, yeah, fuck those rats up, bro. Like, what? We figured out fucking rats are horrible creatures.
Oh
yeah, I live in the city. I could go outside right now and see some. Yeah, for sure.
Go outside and suck on a rat.
Fuck those.
Like, dude, you do suck on their toes, just of course. Yeah.
Anyway, in other news, have you guys seen the Gillette commercial?
Which
I have, yeah.
You
Yeah.
have seen it. Okay,
I've seen
so Chase, what are your
I mean,
thoughts on
obviously we don't use it, but we've
you
seen it.
That's true. Well, you did do something to your mustache. I don't
This is
necessarily
my
agree with.
protest right here.
Fuck you, Gillette. What are your opinions on it? Because everybody seems to be like super upset about Gillette.
No, I'm not upset either way. I think it was a good message, but I mean, it's just whatever. It was just a commercial. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I don't really have a problem with it. I don't really like when companies get political, but it's not my company. If my company did it, I would have said something to the marketing team before we went with it. I'd been like, yeah, it's not really the time to do this. I see what you're trying to do, but
he's just flexing his power. You feel that? It's like I would have stopped that whole thing from happening at my company.
No, if you work for
with an iron fist.
Yeah,
right. That was
yeah. If your fabrication company started to do, I'm sure you would say something too. Like, I don't want to do a commercial.
They would tell me to shut the fuck up and weld.
They'll do the same to me, but I'm still gonna say something.
All right, that's fair enough. Joe, did you see it?
I only saw parts of it, and I saw people's reactions to it, and that's what interested me was how polarizing it was to people.
Very strange.
Well, it's a strange ad, but companies make that mistake all the time, trying to reach with political ad, and most of the time it falls flat, right? Like Pepsi with their like Kylie Jenner saving the world
so bad.
And like
I wasn't even aware of that. That happened.
Oh, it's dude, so bad.
Look up Kylie Jenner Pepsi commercial when we're done, and you'll have yourself a good laugh. But it's
no.
So there's been some bad attempts at like solving issues or making a political statement. Very rarely does it work as well as like Nike's campaign that blew up with Colin Kaepernick, and I feel like that was a home run. But
yeah, but it was a decisive too, even though.
Yeah.
You know what's weird about that Kaepernick thing is like people saying like he shouldn't be using his platform to spread a message. Like, who the hell are you to decide what he does with his platform?
Right.
Like, dude, I don't know if you know it, but the dude is worked really hard to get that platform, and it's his to do with what he wants. Like, what the?
Everybody wants to inject their 2 cents about what they feel like. Joe Rogan should be saying this or doing this more with his guests or having this person on. Or everybody's got an opinion, and at the end of the day, it's letting go of that control. Like, people have a hard time with not hearing what they want to hear.
Those people should not do LSD.
Right. Yeah. Right.
They're gonna try to control that trip. Maybe they should. Well, if they try to control that trip, you're gonna have a bad time, buddy.
Yeah, and some people need to let go of their need to be spoon-fed the information that they want to hear or whatever, or be willing to hear somebody with an opposing viewpoint and hear them
spread that viewpoint. Don't wait for Rogan to do it. If you feel so passionate about it, then get on the goddamn horse, man. Go spread that message. Don't worry about who's spreading the message. I don't know if
we need more of that, though. We don't need more people
everybody's got
I think it's a better alternative.
That's the problem. I think is that everyone has a voice now. It's we've given a voice to too many people. We need that separation. The news people used to look up to them. Now it's like they're fake. Like that's so weird to me that we like. It used to be like Walter Cronkite was the guy everyone listened to every day. He was a father
figure. Go ahead and show your age.
I said used to be. I wasn't around for that, but I was using an example. Good grief. But what I'm saying is totally is like things have changed so much where it's like now we have Philip DeFranco on YouTube. Like we don't know what his qualifications are, but he's now like one of the main names in media. So it's like, it's really weird how things have changed where now you have a voice and now like the three of us are talking. Who are we? So it's
everybody's got a voice, but isn't it funny how we live in the information age, right? With more access to factual information than ever before, yet people don't want to weed through information. They want to be told where to look, how to feel, right? They get this group-like mentality where you see one person getting outraged about something and people just follow suit, and they just start, that's how I feel. Oh, my side feels this way, I'm going to go that way. And very rarely do people really do the homework or dive into facts. I'll ask people, I'll be like, so did you even see the thing you're talking about? Oh no, but I read a thing about it. And blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
I read a thing about a
How
article.
are you so opinionated about something that affects your life 0%, right? But then, but then fail to be opinionated. There's so much hypocrisy, right? Where people will be offended about one thing, but then totally forgive something on the other side when it doesn't fit their narrative. So
Right.
I think that's a big issue that we're going to I think there will be reputable news sources that pop up through the internet and through this feeling out phase of like, hey, we're going to get this story unbiasedly from a thing that's paid for by the people with the people in mind, because you deserve to know about this information in a way that tells you what you need to know about the situation without all of the political bias of, well, the right wants you to see it this way and the left wants you to see it this way. I mean,
I've gotten to the point.
It's a broken system.
I've gotten to the point where, like, I think one of the good things that having a voice and having access to all this crap has done for us is I think it's slowly dissolving celebrity, because now there's so many celebrities. It seems like everybody is famous. And so many celebrities you don't. I was listening to a podcast today where somebody was joking around and it was like there was 6 actors. Like, back in the day there was 6 actors. I think it was Brian Callen when he was talking about Jack Nicholson and how big he was back in the day, and it was like there was only 6 actors, And I think now there's so many. You see somebody who's famous every day and kind of scoff at that, like I don't even know who that person is. So I think in that regard, it might do the job of dissolving this celebrity worship that we have. Maybe not. You look at the Kardashians and the Jenners, and that's kind of the opposite of that. But I also think that it's put me in a position where I'm like, I get my information from people that are like Joe. So when I watch a news broadcaster and they're speaking to me in that way, let's go live to this. I can't even listen to you. I don't. You're not even speaking to me in a way that's relatable. That is it's unlike any way that I've ever been communicated to by any normal person. I can't take it in. I can't even get past your weird thing that you're putting on your show and dance. So I think, if we do get this source, it'll be from more people like Joe, somebody who's just talking to you like a normal person, like your neighbor would, like your friend would, And I've also gotten to the point where there's so much information out there that, like, for example, when Trump first got into office, I made a post on Facebook that was just like, pro-Trump supporter goes on this spiel about why Trump's great. And I can't help but be like, yeah, I think that makes sense. And then an anti-Trump person goes on this rant about why Trump's a piece of shit. And I go, yeah, that makes sense. And then in the end, I'm left being like, I'm too stupid. I don't know what to think. And even if I read the thing, it's like, you read a study. Well, who conducted the study? Who participated in the study? Is that a reputable place? I don't know. What else have they done? Let's see what other studies they've conducted. Were they reputable? Well, what about this that debunks it? Dude, and it makes you just go.
Or they just regurgitate information that they heard without being able to cite a source at all. So it'll be somebody with a firm opinion about something, but when you press them on facts or where did you find that out, or they'll make a statement like, well, 80% of blah, 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 blah. And you're like, where did you get that fact, that statistic? Well, I heard it on a podcast from this guy who may or may not be an expert.
Yeah.
It's like, it gets regurgitated down that pipe. You ever play that game where they tell one kid,
telephone.
And it snakes around the room, and by the end, it's like it's totally changed because everybody adds in their own bias, their own opinions, their own little bit, and the message gets skewed. So you have to. That's what I encourage people to do: is look through more information. If it's something you're curious about, watch a few different things, read a couple articles. Don't just be that person who pulls up one article on Google, the first one that you clicked on, and you're like, oh well, did you know that bananas are great for this? It's like, well,
right,
do a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm only gonna eat bananas then. Yeah, for sure.
Did you know that eating 37 bananas a day keeps the doctor away?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because you're
start
dead.
Getting bunches.
For sure. The way I look at it is what you got was when you went with the guy that's pro-Trump, you got his pros list. then when you got someone that's against Trump, you got his cons list. So now you have both lists to look at, and you have to go, well, with these pros and cons to me, now I can look at those and decide for myself. Because you're never going to, unless you're like, I'm going to be a Trump supporter, so I'm only going to talk to Trump supporters. You're only going to get pro things. If you are the opposite, you're going to only get anti stuff. So that's why you get someone like Joe who goes like, I can just look at everyone and go, okay, well, you're right and you're right. Where do I find my information? Where do I fit in?
And there's most people are in the middle, right? Like even people who were Trump supporters might not believe that spending billions of dollars on a wall is an intelligent decision, or freezing up the government over this stuff, right? They might be totally opposed to that, but because of the society we live in, they're now painted on that side of the fence. So they have to find a way to justify it. And so they look for information that feeds that they want to hear, right? They want to hear that, like, oh yeah, well, of course, drug trafficking and this and this and this, and that's all got to stop. And so you read the information, you buy into the narrative. It was just like when they politically try to tell you like radical Islam is the biggest problem right now, when it's like, yeah, but diabetes and heart disease and all of these things that are killing people off every single day, we just these are not the droids you're looking for, but let's make this group that we can all get angry at together and funnel your attention away from these other things. Because I don't want you taking, my ingredients or questioning. I just watched a documentary on fragrances, the one that stinks or whatever, where they talked about how they put, dude, you guys should watch. It's fascinating. They put fragrance in everything, right? Like every shampoo you use, but those companies don't even know what's in the chemical makeup, and when it gets sent off to labs, they're like, oh, it has this carcinogen and this, and it's like, well, we don't have to tell you what's in it because it just gets put on the back of the label as fragrance, right? So your dish soap and your this and your this, and all of a sudden it's like everything you're wearing, everything you have has fragrance in it, and they're like, well, yeah, there's plenty of links between this and breast cancer and this and this and this and that, and it's like, but you're not telling consumers. We assume it's safe because, this is on the back of a label. It says natural ingredients, right? What does that mean?
That word has been like patented.
Right.
Natural.
We get the
arsenic
the
is natural.
put over our eyes. We get whatever bird boxed and
bird boxed.
we get bird boxed and we get fooled into thinking that we're living this safe, healthy life, and meanwhile you're literally putting carcinogens on your children because I want this to smell nice, or I want this, because you don't know any better, right? But if they were honest about it, they just don't want to lose profits, right? So the minute they start stirring this up, it's like, well, let's have the FDA protect us. Oh, let's not talk about Monsanto and what they do with genetically modified food and pesticides that they know cause.
Well, that affects the profit margin.
Because, God forbid we affect the bottom line of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate and their special interests and all the money that they funnel into our politics. And so there's all of these systems that have broken down. And until we start to fix the foundation that we're built on, and like what matters more to the people, our health or our pocketbooks, it's like, what matters more, the earth and our future, or us driving around in cars that we really like right now, right? It's like
keep barreling down that road until science figures out like how to fix the ocean, how to fix the cancer.
But you're hoping that science figures it out, but science could figure it out and it could get shut down by powerful, wealthy people because it affects their bottom line. So we have all the technology to switch over to electric or to take away fossil fuels in this industry or that industry.
Right, but that industry is so built up.
It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost people jobs. It's going to cause a lot of change. You talked about complacency and change. We're full circle. Companies don't like change either, right? They don't want to have to rebrand. They don't want to have to.
It's about self-preservation.
Their logo and be, what do you mean? We have to change all of our packaging now to let people know that our fragrances have carcinogens and put like warning ingredients may cause cancer, right? Like they don't want to have to do that. So
it's all about self-preservation.
They're going to push back. So as much as we believe that they're looking out for the greater good, we as people want what's best, right? Like we as the majority want to do good, but outside of that, the powers that be are fighting against our best interests sometimes. That sucks.
Yeah, I think what we were saying before about how there's all these different statistics and all these different sources and all these different journalists. Sometimes I think back to like 60 years ago, and it's like due to the sheer number of people, like the population increase, there are more people that are journalists. There are more people that are conducting studies. There are more people that are running statistics, all this shit. So there's just more information, more nuanced information on a thing than there ever has been before. When back in the day, it really was like cut and dry because there was like 15 reputable journalists running around. There was 2 places conducting studies. And so when something came out, you know, something scandalous came out on a politician or something scandalous came out about a product or whatever, it was yes or no, you know, good or bad, black or white. That was really it because the sum of the information available pretty much fell on the left or the right. Mm-hmm. But now, like I said, there's the sheer numbers of journalists and the sheer number of people running studies and crunching statistics and everything. The middle makes more sense because we've exposed this massive gray area. You know, I find it so impossible to like pick a side on anything anymore because we know so much about any given subject, and the more you know about anything, the more you kind of go, oh shit, it's kind of in the middle, bro.
Well, we shouldn't be so polarized. On average, on a whole, if you have a real conversation, a human to human conversation with people who are on the opposite side of all this from yourself, you're going to find that you have way more in common than you've ever had, you know, apart from that person. So I'm a firm believer in that. And,
This has been a brief intermission on Where I Belong.
yeah, right?
Please stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Is that Jingle Bells?
It's very festive.
Hey man, it's almost February.
Wow.
Dude.
It's almost February. You can't have Jingle Bells playing.
I was
it's
expecting
a
like
lullaby. It's a lullaby for children. I was trying to get the phone cord because my phone's on
it was
low.
Jingle Bells.
I thought I could, for some reason my brain couldn't tag it. I was like, is that the Ice Cream Man? I couldn't figure out what that was.
I unplugged my I unplugged this thing, my keyboard, and so I don't know what the fuck happened. But
have you guys
Tiny Bubbles or something Hawaiian? But no, I mean, the Ice Cream Man song is
Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Have you ever seen the guy who sings that song?
Oh, who? Don Ho?
Dude, what a beautiful fucking that giant fat Hawaiian dude.
Oh, Big Is?
Big Is. Who's Don Ho? I just went along with that.
The guy who sings it?
The guy who sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
That's Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Yeah.
That's Big Is.
Dude,
that big Hawaiian dude, yeah.
That guy looks like somebody who you just want to hug. Like, I want that guy. I wish he wasn't dead. He's dead as fuck. But I wish he wasn't. He just seemed like the happiest, sweetest, like, just watching that video and watching him sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
You can't
so magical.
To that song. Yeah, you can't listen to that song without it putting you in a good mood. That's
it's
just one
so
of those
That's a magic song.
timeless. Yep.
That guy has captured something, and just that thing, it's timeless. It's like if anything happens to civilization and somebody, you know, it restarts and years down the line they dig up some artifact, please find that song. That's
a great song in general, but his version of it is,
it's not. I didn't know he didn't sing it.
Well, no, it dates back way further. I think that's even, it's from like early, like if you watch, what's the movie with
Wizard of Oz has some. Yeah,
Wizard
of Oz is Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and then there is that Hawaiian cover version of it. That's
really. Are you sure
that's
not the Chocolate Factory?
Very sure.
Very sure. It's Wizard of
Somewhere
Oz.
Over the Rainbow.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
I thought Somewhere Over the Rainbow was in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
I mean, you are 12, so that'll happen.
How dare you?
Poor little baby.
Have you guys seen? I'm looking over here because I have some things written down. Have you guys seen that? Trump put a ban on transsexuals in the military. Did you see that?
What an idiot! I don't know. That's dumb to me. If people,
I wonder
serve,
what's.
Why would you stop? Why would you stop people from serving who are willing to go fight in the military?
I tried to find out why. Crazy. I can't figure out why.
They said it was a distraction and all this. It's the same BS they did when they were trying to like keep women off the front lines. It's just like. It's silly.
Politically, it makes sense to bring up things that stir up controversy, right? Like if you talk about how much this side hates abortion, then you're going to stir them up about that issue, even though there's these 37 other issues that affect them more, right? there's all these issues that affect them way more. Whoa.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
But
for people that were listening on audio, I didn't just laugh really hard at transsexuals joining the military. I laughed.
Yeah, the
because,
camera went off. Yeah,
Joe had a camera malfunction there for a second. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like I tried to wrap my head around it because I don't like to jump to conclusions, right? And I'm like, okay, well, what are the reasons? Like, what could possibly be a logical reason? So I started looking into it, and some people were saying like, oh, the mental stability of people who are transsexual. I'm like, isn't there a fucking test? Do they pass the test? Anybody that passes the test, is there a test? I imagine there's a test.
You're assuming that the people who are serving in the military are more stable just because they're not flipping their gender. You're making huge assumptions about people's psyche because of one thing or another. It's any which way you spin it, there's no way that he's not wrong on that issue. But that's not going to stop it from distracting for a few news cycles so people aren't talking about his legal trouble.
That's exactly what it is. Everyone around him is going to jail right now and getting we saw it this morning that Roger Stone was picked up by the FBI 6 o'clock this morning with 7 indictments. So I mean, we see that everyone in his circles going to jail. So he's going to be distracting as much as he can right now. You're going to see he's probably going to try to ban, like he's going to put Yosemite out, like it's no longer a national park or something crazy like that.
Right.
So people are talking about that and not about the fact that everyone around him is going to jail. Like literally. I don't know if you guys are paying that close attention, but literally everyone around him is going to jail right now.
Dude, and meanwhile he will continue to call it a witch hunt as if that witch hunt literally, like the joke about that is that there weren't witches, right? Like it's a hunt for something that doesn't exist. Everybody around you is getting caught and indicted and going to jail. It's not a witch hunt anymore, bud. Like it's a full on fox hunt where they got the hounds out after you and somebody's getting turned into a pelt,
Sometimes I think about
it's got a good pelt too.
Dude.
What's the earliest you can vote is like 18? 18 is the voting age?
18, yeah.
I think about a couple of things. Number one, I think about myself as an 18-year-old and I go, oh, for fucking sure that guy should not be voting for who runs the free world. Like that shouldn't be happening at all, dude. And the other thing I think about is how easily swayed I was by just general public opinion. For example, my buddy, one of my best friends went to Rutgers, and he said that while he was on campus, Obama was running for presidency, and he said at some point a knock came to the door, and it was like a bunch of really gorgeous girls, and they were going door to door asking people from the dorms if they were going to come with them to go vote for Obama. And he said by the end of it, before they went down there, it was like they had a whole parade of people following them because they were attractive, and then they had the numbers, and the more it happened. And my buddy John was the only person that was like, dude, I don't know, like even the first thing about it, like I'm not going to vote. And I just, for him, to me, I was like, that's impressive enough that he wouldn't have been swayed by that. But I think I probably would have been if I was in that position. And, so I'm of maybe a time will come. But as of right now, I'm of the belief that I'm just not, if I'm doing a disservice, my disservice isn't that, because I haven't voted. I've never voted. And my disservice in my eyes isn't that I haven't voted. It's that I haven't done my homework. And that's why I haven't voted, because I don't have enough information. I don't think politics is easy to understand. I think sometimes it almost seems deliberately convoluted and difficult to sift through. And I'm not armed with enough information, enough facts. Like we just said, it's so nuanced. It's like I could be convinced of, because I'm not, what's the word I'm looking for, loyal to any particular side, left or right, Republican or Democrat, I could be swayed either way based on any given information at any given moment. And I just haven't dedicated the time to learn all this stuff. And so to me, it feels, I get the argument where it's like people have died for our right to vote, but I don't think they died for the right of idiots to vote. And in a lot of regards, I feel like until I do my homework, I'm a fucking idiot. And I can't be doing that. It just doesn't make sense. So many people vote based off of this, popular emotional knee-jerk reaction. And that feels wrong. It feels entirely wrong. It feels like, no shit, this shouldn't be a popularity contest. But everybody who will look down on you for not voting, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of people are people that have done their homework and are mad at me for not doing my homework, which I think is reasonable. That's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable thing. You know, maybe I should pay more attention to it, obviously, but the people that I see who have just casted whatever popular vote they felt like going with emotionally, and then are jumping on the bandwagon, posting their "I voted" pins.
Oh yeah.
And then throwing shade on people that either voted for the other person or didn't vote at all is, to me, it's a lapse in critical thinking. It's like you've just thrown that away, and you're not going to stop to think for a moment that, like, what I'm like. I did post that on Facebook. I said that I'm too stupid to vote, and I got a mixed bag. Some people were like, wow, that's actually fucking brutally honest, and it's nice to see that. And other people were like, fuck you, it's your duty. People have died for this. But a lot of people who I know personally to be idiots. So I'm like, I don't
few
really
people
know.
vote, man. You can't. If you are an idiot for not voting, then I mean, as we all know, but that means a majority of the people are idiots. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the fact that like you're not alone. And so many people say they voted and didn't vote. They're just wanting to say, like, I did it, I'm part of this. And a lot of those people that are online yelling at you for not voting are those people that are feeling guilty because they didn't either, or that they went in and voted and just gave their shitty opinions. And they're just like, well, you should have given your opinion. Like, I don't have one, so why would I give it? It's really,
yeah.
I respect you
on
for
top of that, they your vote obviously doesn't matter as much as you think it does. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We've been disenfranchised both by gerrymandering and if you look at
college,
just look at the electoral college. Yeah,
I didn't understand that. I was like, what the fuck is that?
That's the point. That's the whole point, is you're not supposed to.
And it's all right. It's built to keep power in power, right? The system's in play. And it's not until we fully, peel back that onion and the society as a whole not only understands it, because you could tell everybody and they don't care. They want to know what affects my bottom line. So until that starts breaking into their pocketbook and it costs them money, or right now, like the government shutdown where people aren't getting paid for their jobs, then they start caring. Then you see political activism. It's not until a group is oppressed, right? And they want their rights, because their rights are being taken away from them, that you see that kind of political action. But you do see that when those big political movements gain momentum and get people and influence, and you said we are going away from a celebrity culture. I actually think celebrity culture is just changing. I mean, everybody wants to be a celebrity. Everybody wants that little blue check mark next to their name that validates you as a human, as being somebody of importance. Just like we all want to talk and say something and have our voice heard and leave our message, which is about legacy, right? It's about, like, you used to read in the history books, about this person that did this great thing, and you want to be able to say you did something, or say you're part of something, or I don't know, not for everybody, but I think that's definitely a motivator for a lot of people, and why they cling so much to people who have made that leap and who are influencers and who do influence you to feel a certain way, or what you like, or what music you might check out, or what you might be into. Like, but that's a very real thing. Like, as a company, we started sending out product and reaching out to influencers because that's what works organically for people to see our product and be like, oh, that's cool. And they can get there on their own without me shoving it down their throat and being like, buy my product. Perfect.
Right. Right.
And I think
changed,
yeah, totally. And I think it kind of goes back on what we were saying earlier about travel, is the fact that you need these experiences and other people's opinions and other people's stories to build your story. So you might not be able to come up with your own opinion politically right now, but I think if you go out and explore other things in the world, you start to build in a stronger opinion, and you start to see
perspective.
That, especially like if you go to somewhere like Japan and you see that things are running way smoother there than they are here, you go like, well, it can be done. That's a modern country. That feels modern. You go there, you're like, oh, this is where America should be, or could be in 20 years if we just like focused and put our minds toward, coming together and the greater good and all being on the same goal. But right now we're so divided that we're fighting ourselves. It's so silly.
Yeah, they quite literally are telling you the opposite, right? Like, oh, we can't, there's no way we could implement, national health care, that would break the system. And meanwhile, like all of these other countries have done it and had success with it, and are there's living examples of how certain moves economically make more sense, how like the trickle down economics never work in any way, shape, or form. But if you invest in infrastructure and this and this, and that's been proved out 100 times, right?
Yeah.
But they don't want to show you the facts. They want to keep messaging you on what works for their narrative. So it's like, well, we got to give back to these job creators because that's the way. Meanwhile, the wealthiest 1% spend less than like 17% of their income back into the economy. But when you give the money back to people who make less than $50,000, they spend like 115% of their money back into the economy. So there's proof on like how to stimulate an economy. It's just people don't want to look at it that way. They just want to buy into the narrative that's been painted by the big conglomerates. That's like, Ford doesn't want you to have success or an extra $500 in your pocket because that doesn't help their bottom line. They want their tax cuts. They want a $1 billion tax cut, and they want to move their money offshore because they don't give a fuck about you or their what their taxes mean for our infrastructure.
You mentioned the government shutdown, and I'm pretty sure it was on my last episode where I was talking about prior to the government shutdown. I never really, I think if most of us are being honest, very little changes about your daily life dependent upon who's in office. And I think if you're looking for the changes, you'll find them and then you'll notice them. And if they're under a magnifying glass because you're concerned about it, you'll see the changes. But if you're somebody who's not partaking, who's, outside of the system, who's, in the center and doesn't care about politics, you very rarely will ever notice your life changing. And I think I use, I don't know if you guys, I imagine you do remember that chick who was like in the middle of fucking, some, I guess, political like doorstep. She was in some sort of center, in some sort of like town square or like city square, and she's waiting to see who's announced for the presidency. She might have been at the Washington Monument, I don't know, but and when they announced Trump, she fell down to her knees and she screamed into the sky.
Yeah.
Nah!
I know the meme for sure.
Dude, that chick to me is just like, if she's got a regular job, I don't know what I would reserve that scream for. It would have to be an impending comet strike. Like
Sure.
A meteor was announced,
But
and it was
now-
like, we're going to get hit with this meteor, and then I would break down and give you the no scream. And I feel like that was all for TV. That was all to be, and then she was constructed into this meme or whatever. But I feel like very often it's not the thing when you get invested in it and you build
totally.
this tower of, this Jenga tower that's
Sure.
wobbly and of all the attention that's being paid to the situation. And then, your Jenga tower comes falling down because of all the attention that you've paid to the situation. Well, then it's bad. But I feel like a lot of people have gone on. What were you going to say, Joe?
To play devil's advocate, to play the other side of that, it might affect other people, even in their daily life, immediately and more impact than you as a white male living in a fairly liberal area, whatever. It's possible that threatened her women's rights, or if she was gay, that like somebody who's going into office who's morally opposed to your viewpoints could be a scary thought. So I don't want to. I agree with you that obviously the reaction, I think people are often over one way or the other, especially when cameras are around. But but the impact that it can have even in the short term in people's lives politically is very real. And I think
even culturally, right? To have that dude in office.
Totally. That person could have been a trans person in the military.
Right.
Well,
that could have, and now they can't.
I'll tell you, this does matter, right? Even in the short term, putting somebody in that is a climate change denier has much bigger implications in the long term than I think people give credit for, because you're not a scientist and you don't understand like the ins and outs. Neither am I. But I know
that dude is like rolling back.
Well,
he's rolling back all the EPA things,
right? So So you might have
the
in the
fuck?
short term been like, what is this going to do to my life? I don't care whether it's this guy or this girl or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
On a bigger scale, what you're saying, like, oh, this doesn't affect me today, but in 10 years, your kid's going to be in a world that could have been 100 times better had we made a couple of moves earlier and shifted the pendulum and shifted a little bit faster towards that progressive. We're headed there inevitably. Whether we're going there isn't the question. It's, can we get there fast enough to affect change? What scares me about that is that and look at the justice, right? They stole a justice from Obama only to give, now Trump's getting to elect how many people in the Supreme Court. That's an entire section of our government that's now going to shift one way to an extreme side.
Yeah, and those are lifetime appointments.
And those are lifetime appointments, and those are issues that could flip, say, abortion, right? Like Roe versus Wade could get turned over, and that really would affect a lot of people. So, I mean, I think that it's easy to say that doesn't affect me today, but for a lot of people it does, and for you it might affect you greatly in the future.
Well, totally. One of my best friends, Sebastian, he's here on a dreamer's visa. And as soon as Obama was elected, he was like, okay, well, now what do I have to start putting in place to ensure that I'm still going to live in this country? Like it's a life or death situation. He's been here since he was a child, like a little bitty baby. He doesn't have any family in Mexico. He does, but he's never met them. He's never talked to them.
You'd be throwing to the wolves.
Exactly. It's like, exactly. He doesn't know a life there. So if he's sent back to Mexico, he's literally starting from zero. And he's built this life where he now lives in San Francisco, one of the most expensive cities in the world, works for a tech company, is doing well. He's able to buy what he wants to buy. He's able to eat the food he wants to eat. He's able to, I'll have all this freedom, and that could very easily just be taken away from him with just one decision. And that's terrifying. That's a reason for him to drop to his knees and say no. I mean, I don't have that reason. And so to me, it does seem a little extreme. But when I'm talking to Sebastian, I feel the weight of that. And I go, like, oh, shit. Yeah.
What I was going to say about the whole thing is, like, even though I make fun of that chick, because I still believe there's no situation where I would break down on my knees and scream no. However, I had this idea that it doesn't change, because that's what most people experience until, like you mentioned, the government shutdown.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was like this possibility that I wasn't going to be able to get my tax refund. Then all of a sudden my dumb ass was just like, dude, wait, what? You're not going to give me my money? And then once I found out, like, oh, on the 28th we'll be able to process them or something, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. But that quick, I went from being somebody who never experienced anything because of the situation to all of a sudden this dumbass wants to shut down the government. Yeah. If I'm getting this right, it's because he wants funding for the wall
that we weren't even supposed to pay for in the first place. Yeah, totally. And that's the thing, is like every time we bring up something about Trump, you grab your head and say, what the fuck? But if you add all those together, that's going to make you drop to your knees and scream no. Like, it's when you add them all together, it's way bigger than there's just like, yeah, he's pulling back some EPA regulations and he's doing this and this.
It's dangle things, or it's the flip side of that, where they dangle $300 into your pocket. They're like, oh, we're going to give you an extra $300 in your tax return this year. Meanwhile, they're stealing $2,000 out of your pocket somewhere else that you're not aware because you're getting moved by the narrative. You're getting sold this propaganda that brainwashes you to believe this is what's important and this is what matters. And they do that. That's why in politics during a campaign run, they don't just go onto podcasts and shoot the shit and talk for 3 hours. They have a very select group of points that they want to harp on over and over and over and over again until it's in your brain that this person stands for this thing and is going to. Meanwhile, you could know nothing about what their plans are on the back end, who their friends are, who they're going to really be looking out for. You only know that you bought into this one part, right? It's why, I hated all of the anti-Trump because of he's a bad person stuff, because they ran so much on that cycle of like, oh, he does this with women and he does this. It's like, look at his politics. Look at what he's going to do or what he's never done, or just peel back the guy's business records or his taxes or any one thing that would show all of these holes and all of these problems. Like, it didn't take a genius with foresight to be able to predict what was going to happen in his first 4 years, right? Like, I think everything is played out pretty much like I thought it would, and that's as sad as I thought it would be. You know what I mean? Like,
that is interesting, because one of the things that really annoyed me about the whole election was, like, as somebody who wasn't closely following politics and didn't really understand, I knew what I would say the vast majority of the average people in the country knew. I knew that he wanted to build a wall. Okay. And I knew that he was an a-hole. I knew that Bernie Sanders was going to ruin the economy by giving away all of the money for universities. But that's what the average person was hearing, right? Like, he's going to give us universities, but he's going to somehow that's going to be bad for the money. And Hillary is crooked, and she's part of the Clinton Foundation, and she's old as fuck, and she falls down. That was what everybody knew. And it was like, well, what do they plan to do? What are their politics? I don't fucking know. Nobody knew that. But yet everybody's running and with these emotional popular opinions. And nobody's basing them on any of the actual politics.
Totally, because Hillary was a crook, but now all of Trump's people are the ones arrested. Like, that's how silly the narrative is. It's like, he was essentially just saying, you're me. You're doing everything I'm doing. And
but I think what also is wrong is that I wasn't just hearing that from people, because I didn't really have political conversations with people. I was hearing that from the people that are supposed to be giving us our news. Yeah, that's what the news was telling me.
Our news got really petty, and that was my problem. Is they went on these news cycles where they would go on that harp about some video he shot where he said he was going to grab girls by the you know what.
Yeah, like, instead of arming us,
instead of talking about today, like, this is this person today, what he's not qualified to do. This is the type of person that you're going to turn over the keys to our country, right? There's a comedian that does a bit about how stupid the idea of a president is, like, the best of us. Like, this is our best person, and he or she is going to be in charge of all of us, It's like, what a joke is that in itself. But to turn your keys over to somebody who had his quality of character, who had his business expertise or lack of real success, like, yeah, you could say he's a billionaire and you could say this, but he did it on the backs of people instead of on his own merits, right? It's not like he ever invented anything or changed the world or did any good by anybody.
Apparently, he just made a bunch of really scammy business moves.
Yeah, he really built his empire off scamming people, not paying workers, making backhanded deals, going bankrupt, like taking advantage of our tax loops. That's the quality of character they should have been shining the light on.
Yeah, it sounds like he's perfect for the job, because that's what politicians do.
And that's the other thing about it is, like, we're spending all this time arguing about the presidency, and I tend to take Rogan's point of view on it, where it's like, this is a stupid job. It's stupid to think that there should even be this one dude that represents all of us in such a way that we're all satisfied.
Well, totally. I mean, that's why there's checks and balances. They're supposed to be checks and balances. That's why we have a Supreme Court, and that's why we have the Congress, because we need more than just one person to decide this. If it was just one person deciding, it wouldn't be a democracy in any way. So we do have those committees, like the Supreme Court is supposed to be the legal committee, and they oversee. And then we have the people are represented by the representatives in Congress, and then there's the president. And now we're all in this team together. But it's not that way, unfortunately.
No, and then they pit you against each other. They make it toxic, right? They make it so you can't talk to your friends on opposite sides and come to any agreements, because they like to paint those narratives that keep you on. They like to bring up the issues where you're either on this side or you're on this side. And so, yes, we as people do have power, right? Every time people rise up together with a common goal, with the belief that, like, hey, this is an injustice and we want to make this better, things change. But they do such a good job of keeping you dumbed down, not caring. Like, David doesn't even want to go vote, right? Because he feels like it's been like, oh, it's all a joke. It's too complicated for me. I don't want to dive into that toxic wasteland that is politics. I get it, but they do that on purpose. Right?
Yeah.
That's why it's important to have conversations. It's important to talk to people on opposite sides and be like, why? Why do you feel this way? Oh, that's interesting. This is my viewpoint, and this is why I feel this way. This is how it affects my friend Steve, or what, you know what I mean? It's like you can have real conversations and come to. They think we're so divided, but we really have so much in common And we
Right.
can all agree that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like he may be poking at like transgenders in the military, but I think as a whole, if you asked as a poll, do you care who serves in the military or how does this affect you? 90% of people are going to be like, are you really asking me a poll about whether or not
Yeah.
somebody wants to serve in the military and what their sexual preference or like it doesn't matter. But
Yeah, all I care about is can you pass the test? Like, can you fuck shit up? You can fuck shit up? Yeah, buddy. Okay, I want you protecting me then for sure. You know, but it's weird because we've gotten to this area too where you were kind of alluding to it. It's like our political opinions, our opinions, period, have become like the sword that you live and die by, the hill that you die on. You can't talk to somebody with an opposing view and just be like, well, that's what you think and that's what I think. And you could have like a cheeky kind of a fucking debate a little bit, and then you could bust each other's chops about it, but you're still friends at the end of the day. Like that doesn't exist anymore. It's like we're having our political debates over social media, and social media makes it so easy to detach and dismiss this other person. So you have this debate with them, and if you're face to face with somebody and you have this debate with them, you're still seeing them smile. You're still feeling their humanity come through, and so you're still okay with it. But when you're having that same debate with the same person, but it's only through text, and you're just reading the zinger that they hit you with, and then you hit them with your zinger, and nobody is there in person to calm each other down and show, a bit of humanity and normality to the situation, you just cut them off and dismiss them. They're done. They're not your friend. You delete them from the list, and now you're in an echo chamber where everybody on your friends list is only parroting the same shit that you already believe. And it's that. I think in that regard, I don't think that's social media's fault. I think we need to be aware that we have a tendency to use it in that way, and so you have to try your best to think about what it's like to interact with people in the real world. Well, so when you have a debate with somebody, you can envision them being normal. Right. It's almost like you shouldn't be able to text it.
Yeah, but until you attach a person to an account, people get social media balls, and they think they're tougher, and that you have a lot of social justice warriors who will say a lot of things, or people who make really empty, really horrible threats or say awful things. Like it's like being in your car, right? When you're behind somebody in traffic and you're like, I will murder you. You know what I mean?
And for like 3 seconds, if you were dropped in that room with them, you would kill them. There's people.
That's the thing. You wouldn't kill them. When you're out of your little safe zone and you're out of your box, if you came person to person and you came up to me and you were like, hey, you cut me off, I'd be like, I'm sorry. I'm in a hurry to get to work. Me too. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Whatever.
No, I wouldn't say that to you because you're 6'7". I'd get out of the car and be like,
apologize to me.
I'm so sorry.
Very quickly. I promise.
That's the thing. I think you have a different life than David. David would be going, sorry.
Well, you wouldn't be able to hear me.
Yeah,
you would
exactly.
be like, what
oh
is
my
he
God,
saying?
You don't bump into line. You're not
ankle.
at the grocery store, right? And somebody cuts you off at the grocery store, and at the top of your lungs, you fucking bitch. Like you wouldn't do that. Like you just would. That's not how we act in society. But just like behind the keyboard, people grow tough, and they're like they want to state their opinion, and they want to call you out, and they want to say something, and until they're attached to like a face-to-face human, or it'll be a little egg account, right, where it's not even a real person, it's a troll who can just without any consequences, there's no link to them, their photos, their self, they're from a private fake account that they're just yelling into Twitter.
Oh, totally.
And it
and
still
you have so much
you.
Yeah, and you have so much more time to form your thought there too online. So you can really you can go and do like 20 minutes of research before you reply and look way smarter than you actually are. So in person, you're going to be like, well, I just don't like Trump. And they're like, why? And you're like, because he's bad. And like, when I'm in front of a computer, it's like, here's 37 reasons why I don't like him with links. But when I'm in person, it's like, but he's just bad.
When people say that to me, like if you come up to me and you ask me why I don't like Trump, I really don't have a bunch of reasons because I'm not politically versed, but I do think he's fucking gross. Like I don't like the way that he acts as our president. It feels fucking gross. I know people that I look up to in real life that are a better person than him. And that shouldn't be the case. It's like I shouldn't personally know dudes that would do a better job at this than him. And then that whole wall thing is like, why are we walling? It's 2019 and we're walling.
No, that's his whole thing is he puts up big big buildings and he puts his name on it. Like that's all he wants in his life.
You think his
So,
name's not going to be on that
well,
wall,
it's
right?
not.
His name's
Well,
for sure going to be on that wall.
it's in everyone's head that it's his wall, whether it's on there or not. So if he gets this done in his presidency, it's Trump's
Dude,
wall, and he has the whole border of our country with his tower on it.
Dude, I
Essentially,
genuinely
that's what he
hope
wants in his head.
that does not happen. Like, I really,
Yeah.
really, but to me, that's shocking because I never really want the president to do or not do anything except for, like, I don't want to go to war. That's not cool. Rather not have that happen. You know, that's been like my stance as a kid. I've never really had anything more passionate than that. I don't want this fucking wall, dude. That is a bummer. That seems like 80 steps backwards in, like, the lineage of humanity, like the chronological timeline of people
The
getting
Great Wall
better.
of China.
Yeah.
The
That's
Berlin
what we're going
Wall.
back to.
It's
And
like,
also,
literally, we went
how
through this.
dumb is that? It's 2019. What does a
There's so
wall
much-
do anymore?
There's so much technology that exists that is both cheaper and more effective for doing what he wants to do. But it's a show. He said it in a political campaign, so now he has to make good on this promise. And then he's going to talk about all the jobs that were created for the people who had to build the wall. And he's going to talk about how this has stopped this amount of crime from happening. But they cherry pick statistics and they don't talk about the 50 other things that are the dark truth to how much it's going to cost us in the long term. Or
Yeah.
how many people, like how many people died making the Great Wall of China, right? It's like, yeah.
And then it's going to be 20
Or
years from
even-
now when we bust a hole through the Berlin Wall. That's what it's going
Or
to be.
yeah, even that just the scar on our country of that. Like we don't look at the Berlin Wall as a good thing. We don't look at the Great Wall of China. It's a world wonder, but it's not a good thing. You don't look at it and go like, China was good back then. That was really fun that they did that. Like it's,
Yeah, that was a
yeah,
good
it's like,
time for China.
It was good times. They were having great. No, it was a bad time in their history,
One
and
of
they're
my
doing
favorite
that.
one of my favorite things was somebody showed like, oh, this is where the proposed wall is going to be, and they were like, and these are all the other places that you can get into the country. And it was like, yeah, what are you really planning on stopping with this?
What are we
artificial
paying
barrier?
for?
It's nonsense. And
We're
and he
paying
wants to
for a
use-
silly bitch
He
move.
wants to use the same money that would rebuild infrastructure, that could pay teachers to
That's very
do
cool.
their job, that could pull us out of these economic sludges that we've wound ourselves into. But that's not their intention, is not fixing the economy. It's about a political statement being fulfilled. And he already is, how many times he backtracked on the fact that Mexico was going to pay for his wall, and because
Yeah.
he didn't understand it, right? He made that statement without understanding it, and then they tried to justify it in all the. It's like, dude,
It's weird, man. It's the way he worded that thing from the beginning, like I'm gonna build a wall. It's like he used clickbait.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
To
100%.
that whole like the
They
whole
were chance.
clickbait. Yeah, they were chance. Like everything is boiled down to that. Last night, my wife and I are sitting down watching The Punisher, which, by the way, if you haven't watched The Punisher, it's fucking great. Season 2 is amazing.
TV show. Okay.
It's so good. And she goes, New York just passed a law where you can have an abortion up to full term. And we were like, whoa, what the fuck? That's really weird. And then you start to look into it and it gets convoluted and weird. It's like, no, that's only if it's going to, if the mother's going to die. Then, which is like, okay, all right. It's still like a scary thing, but it's like if you're choosing one over the other and you make
how many of those people who are so anti that, right, would flip their opinion in a second if it was them or somebody they
totally.
love
Absolutely.
going through it.
Their daughter,
Just because-
their grandkid. for
Absolutely.
sure.
all of those politicians who are like so anti-abortion and their kid gets pregnant and needs an abortion and they're
Well,
like,
here's
"Yep,"
the
and
weird thing that people do, right? So it's like it's the same thing with the trans thing, right? Where they come up with like petty weird reasons why they can't serve. So like the more you look into it, it's like no, it's not if she's gonna die. It just says health complications. Like that's what it says. That's the wording that it uses. And you're like, okay, well, I'm sure there's like a plethora of health complications that like aren't exactly death, but could be a bunch of different reasons where it was still like life jeopardizing or what the hell ever. And then people start chiming in and they're like, do you know all the loopholes that people are going to find for health complications to kill their full term babies? And that becomes the fucking argument. And it's
But
the
yeah.
same thing with the trans.
How does any of that, you talk about politics not affecting your life, why does getting involved in what other women do with their bodies or sexuality or what bathrooms they go into, why does that
Or
affect
anyone, yeah.
you at all? But people get wound up into those issues because
Right.
they stir you up, they cause a visceral reaction that is,
well, that's what they do. They use those, they pluck on your irrational emotional heartstrings. So it's like with the transgender bathroom thing, it's like, well, we need a proper bathroom, because if they are using the bathroom that they identify with, then your kid's going to be taking a dump with some dude in a dress. That was always it. It was some dude in a dress. And I'm just like, number one, it's so unlikely that's going to happen. Like, you're rolling the dice on a percentage that's so minute. It's like you'll go your whole life without ever running into that scenario. And number
never
two,
is going to happen. It's a fictitious hypothetical situation that they create.
But also, how many times do you go to a bathroom and there's just like a crazy crackhead in there, and it's just
how many times do you watch a podcast and there's a guy pissing in the jug? Like, it's on a
pretty.
Exactly.
I mean, if you roll the dice on that, that's got to be pretty. It's like me and Ari Shafir are the only people that are pissing in jugs. But it's just people do that. They'll take a thing and they'll spin the most ridiculous emotional heartstring on it, and that becomes the, like, when you chop down the transgender people serving in the military. It's like, I thought, okay, well, people are talking about the cost, like the cost for hormone replacement therapy or whatever it is, and the cost for like surgery. And it's like, well, what does that cost? And I had my wife look it up, and it's like, it could, the therapy, like for hormones, could cost up to like $1,200 a year or something. I'm like, $1,200 a year, or maybe she said $1,200 a month. And either way, I was just like, I don't know, for the number of people that are transgender that are going to be in the military, and the people, and then I said, okay, well, let's put it into this perspective. What sort of things do you think the military pays for already that would surprise you and no one's bitching about?
Yeah,
I bet you it would probably
on that, like on that note of transgender and taking things and spinning them. Can we say hi to the Comedy Content Collective?
Oh,
our friends
absolutely.
out there.
Well,
all the zers and hers and he's and she's
and the mommies. They're also part mommies. Well, we can't. I feel like we can never do an episode with anybody who's part of that group without like effectively shouting out every single person. Like, you have to. So we like.
Then I feel bad because we have to like almost pull up a list and name everyone person by person.
Because we run deep.
We're not going to name anyone
into specifics or talk about anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Big shout out.
The group as a whole, I love those guys and girls.
Oh my god.
Totally. We're not going to shout out anyone in particular, but she is the best. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we're not going to say one person's name, but it rhymes with undead.
Avid, yeah.
Oh yeah, oh, that's what we meant. Yeah. She's the best. Yeah. David. Yeah. No, it's been a great group. We're having a lot of fun. I've been kind of relaxed in there lately. Haven't really had time because I've been so busy outside of it. But I love that we can just jump in there at any time.
I feel like it's really gained traction. Like people are recognizing like the Comedy Content Collective as a thing. And not only that, but it's like everybody is constantly getting wins. Yeah. Like everybody's constantly getting reposted, communicating with these people. Like I think
got that hitters.
Dude,
gang.
Dude,
I think it helps that we're all in a group that we can see what's working for other people, and it's so much quicker to get to that point now where we don't have to do trial and error ourselves. We can literally see that if you do this type of design, it's going to get shared, and we've seen 30 people in our 30 different shares from our group it happened to, so we know what works. So it's
you want to talk about the opposite of famine mentality. It's like everybody is giving advice, everybody is constantly showing love. There's seemingly like no jealousy. Every individual person's win is like celebrated throughout the group, and it's just banger after banger. It's actually really surprising, really refreshing, because when you think the internet has a tendency to be nasty and malicious, and like there's like competition amongst all things, like it's not a competition. It's like this rising tide raises all ships kind of mentality, and everybody's on board with that. And so every time somebody wins, it's like it's almost a race to see if Christina Pazinski reposted so and so's thing, and if you see that, like you're the first one to post it in the group, like look, they won.
I know ahead of time. I've gotten to the point where I know ahead of time which ones are going to get shared. And there's always the occasional one that surprises me, but there's one that'll get posted and I'm like, that's 100% getting shared. Like some of them are too good not to. And I think we're all pushing each other to not just create more, but create funnier and more geared, like you said, like you can gear it now so specifically to your audience, and you know that like, oh, so and so from, you know, if I'm playing to your mom's house, and I know that if I make, you know, Tom into a murderer, that's going to play well.
That's going to do great. Yeah.
I, you know, any Good Morning Julia, anything is going to play well. You know, like there's certain, if you start playing to those audiences or to the comedians or whatever podcasters, you know what's going to hit.
Right. Nathan made that dude banging the Big Mac.
So funny, dude.
It was so funny and so disgusting.
The one that got shared in the group, that was the
triple he emailed that version. I think he emailed that.
Yeah, the one they went with is a much better, much more politically correct version. But
I hope
Nathan is killing it
in my hamburger.
Nathan is just, there's a darkness inside of him that I'm so fond of.
Saying in the chat,
I'm so fond of it.
You were like, they say the more that you start to think this way, the more it just becomes part of you. And he's like, no, I'm born like this. It's just me.
Like, I don't know.
I didn't train myself to be weird. I just was weird, and I started drawing it instead of thinking it.
I think it is part of being English. It's just so shitty over there that they have to. It's like, what do they call that? Gallows humor, where it's like your situation's so crap that you have to have a good sense of humor. It's always like raining over there. They eat stupid shit. The only thing that's good for them is whatever they eat. They have
you
good.
You should go over to England. The food's fantastic.
I'm okay. Well, I know they do good baked goods. My wife is balls deep in the Great British Baking Show with Mary Barrett. Well, she's like dead or something like that. But they had a bunch of
soggy bottom.
Soggy bottom. Let me tell you, the crust on this tart is to die for. That dude, Paul Hollywood, with like his blue contacts. No, you're not aware of that? You're not aware of old Paul Hollywood, the British guy who changed his name to Hollywood and has blue contacts in? And
you could just be Hollywood. That would have been
a missed opportunity.
Right? Son of a bitch. But yeah, apparently they do good baked goods. But as far as like actual food that doesn't give you diabetes, they suck at that. So,
cookies and biscuits.
Cookies and biscuits, boy. I'll never go there. Now, I would probably go there to like.
To be honest, I love the pub grub from England, dude. You go over there and get some good bangers and mash. Get some fish and chips.
Well,
all day, every day. Do they get some?
David's like, they got Long John Silver's in his town. You don't need to go anywhere.
I live maybe about 15 minutes away from this, like it's a village. It's called Warwick, and it's in like a part of New York that just nobody ever wants to go to, but hipsters are taking it over and like gentrifying it, so it's filled with like coffee shops and shit. But a lot of the architecture is super old, and one of the restaurants over there is like a straight up little Irish breakfast joint, I guess, but like all the windows are old stained glass, and like the booths are like, it's all the original architecture, all the original seating and everything. It's so old and so tiny. But I got like fish and chips there, and because I felt like that, and I had like a Guinness with it too. And wow.
So don't talk shit about their food. It's good.
Well, that's Irish.
That's
people.
My people too. By the way,
it's over there.
I'm actually part Irish. I don't know what part, but I'm part Irish.
Not the hair part.
I don't have any kind of. I have no identity when it comes to like ethnicity, because I'm like.
You're part amphibian. We know that.
Well, and I'm also some obscure South American Spanish, and then I'm, Irish, and my aunt is like, you're Irish and you're White Russian, and I'm like, that's a fucking drink. I don't think that's even a thing. What is White Russian? That's a drink, which is actually. Have you ever had a White Russian?
Yeah, I'm lactose intolerant, but I do.
What's the shirt? David's like the epitome of that shirt that was. I saw it once. It was Mario, and it was like Mario's the combination. He goes. He looks Mexican. He talks Italian. He was created by the Japanese. Like it was
exactly.
Like,
that's me. Well, now my son is like Peruvian, Italian, Irish. Uruguayan, and like a couple of other fucking things.
Strong genes.
Well, it sounds like you need to find where you belong.
Where? Oh, can you do a where?
Oh my fucking god, bro!
Dude, but have you tried DMT? No, but
I would love to. I actually was asking.
For real? You need to get out here. We need to do that.
Yeah, well, I was asking Nathan, because, that's smart. I was like, where do you think I would even go about figuring that out? And he's like, you don't. I don't know if that's how. You don't. You don't, mate.
find
That's
me
a fucking
in
easy.
If you can't figure it out,
That's-
you're not going to. That's the rule with that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Well,
if
you know,
don't
I
already
can't. Yeah,
know,
because I
you
can't
won't
even
know.
find weed over here. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
want to go and knock on my neighbor's door.
Yeah. If you
You
can't
know, go
find
ahead.
weed, you're not going to find DMs.
I'm pretty fucked.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
you're
fucked.
But
Well-
but no, all jokes aside, you should do like one of those 23andMe and like get your DNA tested and have a whole episode where you look up the different.
That'd be the most
places that
expensive
you're
episode
from.
I've ever done.
No, they're like
23andMe is
$75.
fucking
It's like
exactly.
$75.
Every single one of these episodes is free. It would be the most
Okay, well,
expensive one.
Save up some money for a good episode.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I
As opposed to this free shitty one.
yes,
You get
God
your-
damn it. Why don't you invest a little bit in your product? You
Wait a
dumb
second.
fucks?
We're not
Wait, I
getting
thought we were
paid
getting
for
paid.
this?
Wait,
No.
definitely.
Sorry,
not.
boys.
That's it. All
This has
right,
been
sorry,
another
I'm
fantastic
getting out of
episode
here.
of Where I Belong. Thank you for
This
tuning
has
in.
been fun.
Listen, guys, I do got to wrap this up, though, because I'm going to piss my pants. I tried to do you guys the service of not peeing in jugs, and so I'm
appreciate
really going to
that.
pee
Hey,
myself.
Can we take
I
a
was under
moment
the
to
impression that-
appreciate
yeah.
David? A round of applause for David for making it the whole episode. without the
About
drugs.
fucking time.
Well,
These
I
round of
sent a
applause need
text
to happen.
message at the point where I thought you were peeing. I thought you were sneaking one because at one point you like moved the microphone and you were like,
No, no.
Uh,
I think because I have a dry erase board with all of the topics that I pretend to naturally stumble into, but are
Yeah.
actually all written down on
Oh,
that
totally.
board. If you saw
was
this
super
board,
Although,
you would be like, wow, these are things that I just thought you wrote all of this down. And I'll
So
even
wait,
pretend
wait,
like
wait,
a psychopath.
Did you pre-write out your genie wishes in that case, like your three?
Oh,
wishes
I
that
had
you
been
were-
thinking about those since I was 7.
yeah,
and
see,
then,
here's the thing, Joe.
So wait, you
he
thought
he
about
warned us weeks ahead of time that these were going to be the best wishes we've ever
You
heard
thought
in our
about them
life.
that long? Wait, you thought about them that long, and you still had.
this has
no
been another
idea.
episode of Where I Belong.
It was, we were like, he goes, these are foolproof. You're not gonna, you will not be able to poke. a
They
hole
were-
in me." I was
Thought
They
about
were
this.
humble because I thought about it, and you can't just wish for outlandish shit without consequences. So I made my wishes structured in such a
course.
way that it wouldn't disturb anybody else. I wouldn't live some life like Grand Theft Auto with the cheats on, where now I've got all the weapons and I could fly, and now life is. I mean, like, life wouldn't suck if I should have just said I should fly.
I just
Whatever.
like that
Yeah,
you
man.
you did no good for the world at all. Everything was about you. And
Well,
your-
the thing
your
was,
longevity.
I
And
can live
not for your
forever.
family, not for like you weren't like, oh yeah, well I might give some people some of my bathtub.
I
hot
came up
dogs
with
or
these when I was
whatever it
7.
was.
All right, I didn't have a family when I was 7. I
We've
plan
been
on.
thinking of these for 21 years.
I can fund all types of scientific research with my precious stones in my pocket. You guys didn't think
Dude,
about that.
Your precious stone. I don't see anything wrong with your precious stones here. That you were just gonna pull rubies out of your pocket and walk down to the diner and be like, "Hey, can I get a cheeseburger? I got these rubies." man.
Listen,
I got
And also, that's not going to affect the economy in any way.
No,
All
well,
these
it's
precious-
certainly not going to
fluffs
affect
of rubies.
After being immortal for, a long time. Yeah, sure, I will have devalued every precious stone industry, but I think it's better than printing money or, whatever. You guys suck, all right? That's the
I
point
love
of all
it.
this.
Hey, but all jokes aside, I loved that episode. I love all the episodes of this show. It's one of my favorite podcasts.
Thank you so
Everybody
much. I
should watch
appreciate
it,
that.
especially this episode.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh,
Let me
yeah.
so let's wrap it up here. Is there anything you guys want to say, parting words, maybe like what would you say if you had to read like a sermon at my funeral?
That's
Wow.
David lived. He wasn't big in stature, but he was big in ideas and
Very tall.
He was nice to most people if you weren't in front of him in traffic, or if you weren't a nature related mess like grass or snow.
All right, that was
No,
not
you know
good.
what?
No.
All seriousness, yeah, you're a good dude. I'm glad to be your friend, D.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Joe. So, like I said,
Comedy Content Collective. We got to say
Comedy
that, though.
Content
Definitely
Collective.
follow the Comedy Content Collective.
photoshopped as fuck. Chase Lepard. Well, it's photoshopped AF. You don't have to type in the whole words because you probably won't find
Photoshop _ AF.
AF. Chase Lepard. There's no
Lot to
underscores or
remember.
anything, right? You were
Yeah,
just
nothing. I don't
mash
have
my shit
anything
together.
Exactly.
Algorithms. Get out an episode of Algorithms. I want to see it.
Yeah, follow
Here.
follow Algorithms podcast because it's coming, and I can see that Chase is super excited. I can see one of Chase's eyes. And yeah, follow the Comedy Content Collective and hail yourself. What is that from? That T-shirt?
Last podcast on the left. It's another great podcast. It's about murder. You'd love it.
I don't like those. I'm not into like murder documentaries. I'm not into, murder anything.
Just real life murder.
Well, yeah, I will watch a video. Thank you for tuning into Where I Belong. Find me on iTunes. Find me on Spotify. Find me on YouTube. If you're there, leave a rating, leave a review, subscribe. It only helps the show to grow. It only helps to put a bigger spotlight on me. So if you like the show and you like what you hear, like I said, rate, review, subscribe. Find me at Where I Belong. On Facebook, on Instagram, you can find me at Where I Belong Podcast. And on Twitter, you can find me at Where I Belong P. And I don't know why. I never selected that. It just gave me that, and I can't for the life of me figure out how to change it.
It was a character limit.
Well, why don't you just let me get rid of the P then? I can't even figure out how to change it. So thanks, Twitter.
It kind of goes with the whole Jug theme. I'm going to give you a new logo.
I can't figure out why it's so stupid. Also, find me at whereibelongpodcast.com. You have access to everything that I've ever done. Any of the audio, any of the video. You'll have access to all the links, that I have to offer, whatever those are. And if you so feel inclined, you can go to Patreon and you can support the show for as little as $1 a month or upwards of $10,000, $11,000. Whatever you want to do. It's all up to you. I'm not putting any limits on you. But you can find me there as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Joe and Chase, for taking the time to do this. It has been a pleasure.
Always, my friend. Thank you for having us.
What is that? What is he? Don't put the Hat Man on my.
Oh, yeah.
And also fix the orientation of your phone. It just keeps doing the flippies.
Thanks for having us, David. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you guys for coming on. All right.
All
so thanks for tuning in.
Frog King.
Yes, that's right. My children's. Peace out, guys. You guys don't leave, though. Stop recording.
Oh, wait. I thought that I looked away and looked up and